are no seats for the poor.
Michelle, my son's mill, stood blocking the path between the bride and groom. The bride, Emily, seemed utterly perplexed by her mother's actions. So were we. I exchanged looks with my son, Alex. Today was Alex and Emily's wedding day. It was supposed to be their big day, yet somehow Michelle ended up running the show. I looked at Michelle. She looked down on me and Alex. Well, if that's how it is, there's nothing we can do.
Shall we head out?
Yay. We decided to leave the venue. I could hear Emily pleading with Michelle. Michelle didn't think she's in the wrong. She thought it was our fault that we were poor and single mother families. But I disagree. What's so criminal about being a single mother family? And what's inferior about it? I'll show Michelle. The seriousness of raising my son alone. My name is Lily Tanner. I'm 50 years old. I was blessed with my son, Alex, at the age of 25. But my husband passed away in a car accident shortly after Alex was born, leaving for heaven. For the past 25 years, I've raised and supported Alex on my own. I never remarried. I've been tirelessly working part-time jobs. All the hardships were about to finally pay off.
I've got a girlfriend. I want you to meet her.
Those words were such a relief to me. However, Alex's engagement brought new turmoil into our household.
How much does Alex make a year?
The first words were not a greeting, but a question. It was a luxurious mansion. I was surprised by how comfortable the chairs were when Emily and her mother appeared.
Well,
as Alex hesitantly disclosed his salary, Michelle snorted arrogantly.
Is that all?
Mom, stop it.
Emily frowned. I must have had a similar expression. How rude, was my honest opinion of Michelle.
Thank you for coming today,
Emily said, trying to mend the atmosphere.
I've brewed some tea. It's my favorite tea.
Please stop it, Emily. It's not like these people would know the difference anyway.
Mom.
Emily's face fell. Sitting opposite Emily, Alex spoke up.
Maybe I can't tell the difference in taste, but I'd like to hear what Emily has to say.
Alex, thank you.
A smile finally appeared on Emily's face. Michelle looked on at their exchange with evident displeasure. She seemed unhappy with Emily and Alex's relationship.
May I have a moment?
What is it? Michelle gestured for me to follow her to another room. She didn't want to make Emily any more uncomfortable. That meant the upcoming conversation was bound to be unpleasant.
What kind of nerve do you have?
Excuse me.
Your son, what nerve does he have, approaching my daughter, with such a low income?
Michelle raised her voice hysterically. I was speechless. Alex graduated from a top university and works at a decent company. And that's where he met Emily. Meaning, in terms of income, they were compatible. In such a situation, she was only criticizing Alex.
The heir to this house is her brother, so she will eventually leave and marry into another family.
So are you dissatisfied because your daughter will become our family?
Of course.
Michelle was red-faced with excitement.
I had a detective investigate. You're a single mother family, aren't you?
And what of it? I tilted my head. I've never felt inferior about being a single mother family. Sure, there were days when I came home late. Maybe I made Alex feel lonely at times. But as a result, Alex grew up to be a good person.
I'll protect you for all the hardships we've faced.
I'll never forget him saying that to me at the high school graduation ceremony. True to his word, Alex worked hard. He went to university on scholarships, always kept his grades at the top. After he graduated, he got a job at his current company and repaid his student loans on his own. I'm proud of my son. Being insulted like this, I couldn't stay silent. With all due respect.
Let me guess, you irresponsibly had a child, and the man ran off. How shameful.
Well, you really have a terrible imagination, I said, barely containing my anger. Michelle's brows furrowed.
What did you say?
Why can you only imagine such lowly things? What's going on in your head is far worse.
I will not allow you to mock my wife any further.
A low, growling voice interrupted. Looking up, I saw a middle-aged man standing at the entrance of the room, glaring at us.
David,
Michelle exclaimed, rushing to the man. He gave a sloppy smile and embraced Michelle. It appeared this man was Michelle's husband. Michelle wore a triumphant smile. She was clearly believing that being married made her superior.
listen to this, dear.
Yes, I understand.
The man replied saccharinely to his wife, then looked hard at us.
If you continue to insult my wife, I will have to call a lawyer.
But it was her who started berating my son unprovoked. I protested. It was futile. The man, completely henpecked, regarded me as an enemy.
So, someone like you is going to be part of my daughter's family. Emily has no judgment.
Yes, indeed.
The couple looked down on Alex and me together. As I was at a loss for words, footsteps approached.
Stop it, both of you.
Emily,
I thought it was strange that you suddenly disappeared, so I came looking.
Alex spoke with a voice strained with anger.
Emily, I'm sorry. We're leaving for today.
Alex.
Emily looked down sadly. Alex momentarily showed a look of reluctance, but quickly composed himself.
Let's go, Mom.
Sure. Alex began to lead me away. Michelle's voice called out from behind us.
never come back to our house again.
As if I would. Emily did nothing wrong. It was her parents who were pitiable for putting her in such a difficult position. Yet, I couldn't bring myself to forgive them. What should I do? Is it okay to just watch over Alex and Emily's relationship? Hey, Alex.
I have no intention of breaking up with Emily.
He said, as if reading my thoughts. His eyes looked down, filled with a sense of apology.
I really do love Emily.
I see. His words and expression made up my mind. I'll support your relationship."
Mom, thank you.
He must have expected me to oppose. Alex broke into a smile, and his happiness was contagious. I found myself smiling too. I've been quietly observing Alex and Emily's relationship. Since then, we haven't seen Emily's parents. Emily avoided the topic when she visited our home, engaging in different conversations instead. Alex inevitably led our conversation. They made sure to include me in their world. I appreciate it deeply.
Mom, we're talking about the wedding venue.
Wedding venue. What about it? I was puzzled, and the two exchanged looks.
Come on, Mom. We just talked about Emily and my wedding.
What? Your wedding? I couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. So you two are finally getting married.
Despite our parents' objections. But it's our life.
Emily said, her expression a mix of emotions. Yet determination underpinned her words. It seemed she had chosen to walk through life with Alex. As a mother, could there be anything more gratifying? I'm fond of Emily too. If she's willing to stand by Alex as his wife, nothing could be more reassuring. Tears welled up in my eyes. Alex noticed and was startled.
Are you okay, Mom?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I know it's too early to cry, but I hastily wiped away my tears. Emily offered me a handkerchief. It's adorned with a pattern of light blue clovers on a white background.
You are my Mill.
So you'll call me that. Thank you. I was overwhelmed with joy. To have such a kind son and deal was a blessing. But this feeling of happiness was about to be shattered. Starting with the wedding reception, a nightmare's beginning. I stopped, puzzled. Looking around the venue, I couldn't find my seat anywhere. After making a full circle, it was clear there was no seat for me. Wondering if it was a mistake by the venue staff, I approached the staff at the venue. "Excuse me."
Are you still here?
It wasn't a staff member who responded, but Michelle. Her arms crossed and smirking smugly.
Why don't you take a hint? This wedding is very important to the Minton family.
Michelle said so with a condescending tone. Indeed, she had taken over arranging the entire ceremony. All the plans Emily had made were dismissed, and Alex's opinions were ignored.
Mom, hold on, wait.
Emily and Alex, unable to stand by any longer, came over. Michelle inserted herself between them, standing protectively like a mother shielding her child, right between the bride and groom. Then she said those words.
There are no seats for the poor.
I see, that's the reason. So, Michelle never intended to provide a seat for me from the start. Realization dawned on me, accompanied by a sense of emptiness.
Shall we go?
Yay. Alex took my hand, and we began to walk away unsteadily. Emily seemed to be pleading with her mother, but Michelle remained indifferent. And so, the nightmare of a wedding came to an end. As we got into the car, Alex's smartphone rang. It was Emily.
Are you both okay?
Yay, Sorry for leaving you alone there.
It's not your fault. It's my parents to blame.
Emily's voice was clearly downcast. Alex must have wanted to stay by her side. I looked up and said, "You should stay with Emily.
But what about you, Mom?
I can make it home on my own." I tried to remember how to smile, but my expression remained strained.
I am sorry, Mom.
After hesitating, Alex decided to return to the venue. Driving home, I pondered, what's so wrong with being a single mother family? Michelle had mentioned using a detective. Then, she must have investigated Alex as well. She doesn't understand a thing about my son. But maybe that's for the best. With that thought, I caught myself. What was I planning to do? It's obvious, isn't it? To retaliate against that hateful woman. I had all the cards I needed. Michelle had only paid attention to what suited her, oblivious to the rest. That's why she is unaware. Waiting at home for Alex to return. He came back with Emily.
I'm sorry about my parents.
It's all right. I had regained my composure. Seeing my calm demeanor, they both seemed relieved. Exchanging relieved glances, I told them, "Alex, I'll contact Grandpa."
What? Are you calling my grandpa?
Alex's smile vanished, and Emily tilted her head in confusion.
What's wrong?
My grandfather is the president of Dale Corporation.
Oh, really?
Emily seemed to grasp the situation. She said with her expression one of alarm,
Is there no other way?
"We've reached our limit," I said, almost moaning. My Phil, John, promised me, after my husband passed away, that he would solve any problem if we ever faced one. That's right. On the day my husband never returned from an accident.
Shall we take Alex in? It must be hard with just a woman's hand.
John had offered, but I shook my head. I will raise Alex on my own.
Okay, I got it.
In that case, John made a promise to me. And now the moment to fulfill that promise had arrived.
My father was meant to inherit Dale Corporation.
Alex said, looking down.
I had no idea you came from such a distinguished lineage.
I'm sorry for keeping it a secret, but I hated the idea of being evaluated because of my family's background.
I understand that, but I wish you had told me.
Emily's voice was filled with sadness. It was understandable. Dale Corporation is a globally renowned conglomerate. Because Michelle made an enemy of someone with such a powerful backing. The Minton family will be over. The retaliation began immediately.
My parents' clients seem to be pulling away from us one after another.
Is that so? I nodded, unsurprised. Since then, Emily had only returned home once to collect her belongings, and had stayed away from her parents' house. She's been living with us. She's been helping out with household chores within her capacity. But the figure she cut was far from that of a blissful new bride. Emily was caught between her family and her new home. The strain was undeniable. Alex, noticing her exhaustion, worried about her constantly. He would bring home her favorite sweets after his work and made sure to listen to her feelings whenever possible.
If this continues, my family will end up destitute.
There's nothing we can do. I sighed back at her tearful plea. John accepted me, despite our differences in family background and education, as his son's wife. It was a gift of trust and love for his child, accepting all his choices.
That's...
Emily struggled to find the right words. Emily's parents criticized a single-mother family. They looked down on Alex as unworthy of joining their family lineage. But what's a reality?
That poor-looking man is the grandson of a major corporation's president. You must be joking.
Shouldn't we apologize to them now?
Don't be stupid.
What Emily heard from her parents during her brief return home to collect her belongings was such an exchange. Since that was the only time she went back, she didn't know how their conversation turned out afterward.
My mom isn't the type to apologize to anyone.
I guess so. Some people only feel fulfilled in life by looking down on others. What a petty existence. It's a pity, too.
What about suggesting your family apologize?
That's impossible. Or rather, it would be meaningless. Doing that would just make my mom more stubborn.
What a troublesome person.
Alex was exasperated. Emily looked down and shook her head too. It seemed there was no solution for them to break through this situation. Nor did I have one. Or rather, I didn't even intend to stop it. The Minton family was intoxicated with power. They looked down on others. They didn't hesitate to crush those around them. And now, by misjudging who to look down upon, they found themselves on the side being looked down upon. It was only a matter of time before they were crushed by the very power they revered. What would they do now? If they are as capable as they boasted, they'll find a way out on their own.
Lily.
Emily finally broke down in tears.
Mom, that's enough. It's time to talk to Grandpa.
It was when Alex began to speak. Then Emily's smartphone rang. She looked up. She wiped her tears and checked the notification. Her eyes widened.
It's from my mom.
Go ahead and answer. They must have their side of the story.
Okay.
Encouraged by me, Emily obediently answered the phone. A loud voice could be heard even on our end.
You traitor, running away as soon as the family is in danger. Aren't you ashamed?
I'm not running away.
Emily seemed a bit offended. That's probably right. She's not running from anyone. She's facing reality, both yesterday and today. While she worries about her family home, she chooses to stay with us. Not to appease us, but to stop me. Emily's tone became firmer.
Mom, do you see now? This is what happens when you judge people superficially.
Don't speak as if you understand.
Michelle's voice was filled with rage. In contrast, Emily remained calm. Perhaps her struggles had given her a clarity of vision.
Why did you have to be so cruel? I wanted my new family to get along. But Mom, you couldn't do that.
That woman is not worthy of our family.
Michelle had narrowed her disdain solely to me. I bit my lip. Yes, It was me. I was born into an ordinary family with neither impressive education nor looks. Yet, someone accepted me, loved me, saying I was enough. He was an heir, and at first, I was hesitant. But eventually, we were drawn to each other and decided to marry.
You won't regret it, right?
That's all John asked.
How could I?
That was my husband's response, a face I'll never forget. His warm, dependable profile, promising to protect me. However, my husband's promise did not last long. Leaving for heaven alone, my beloved. Tell Michelle.
What should I convey?
Shaking off my self-mockery, I spoke in my usual tone. To give you a chance. What a proposition I was making. I couldn't even tell what expression I was wearing. I myself wasn't aware. John will come, and you can directly argue that this treatment is unjust.
As you wish.
It seemed my voice reached without Emily's intervention. Michelle, summoning her last bit of defiance, retorted.
To get upset over such trivial matters and oppose us.
It may be trivial. I pondered. It didn't bother me to be the focus of attacks and insults. But what about Alex, with such a character for his mill? When would he start receiving poor treatment as well? This wasn't about pride. This was a mother's battle to worry for and protect my child. Michelle didn't seem to understand that. What began as a direct confrontation turned out quite pitiful.
I'm sorry.
For what exactly are you apologizing?
Upon entering, Michelle's husband immediately apologized. John, seated comfortably on the sofa, observed the couple. Michelle looked down on her husband with disdain.
You.
Boy, you should apologize, too. This is entirely our fault.
Michelle's husband began to sob. I stood beside John. Alex and Emily were not allowed to be present. John deemed it too harsh a scene for them to witness.
Entirely.
My father-in-law's eyebrows twitched.
Explain specifically. What did you do, and what was wrong with it?
Well,
Michelle's husband fell silent, seemingly unable to answer the question. Not surprising. They didn't truly believe they were in the wrong. They were just apologizing to appease John, waiting for the storm to pass. Like children scolded by a teacher.
So you apologized to us without knowing what you did wrong?
that is, well.
Michelle's husband looked troubled, turning to his wife. Michelle managed a strained smile.
The misunderstanding about not preparing a seat for Miss Tanner, right? We are truly sorry.
A misunderstanding. I raised my voice. I remember clearly. You told me there are no seats for the poor.
What are you talking about?
Michelle feigned ignorance, her face a picture of confusion. I was dumbfounded. With John present, Michelle tried to pretend as if the inconvenient truth had never happened. How dreadful you are.
You're the one with a persecution complex. Stop slandering us.
That's enough.
John said, clearly fed up.
So you claim it was all a misunderstanding?
Of course.
Michelle answered immediately, There was hope in those eyes. If she could convince John, they would win. But the next moment, my Phil was furious.
How long do you intend to lie? I have confirmed your actions not only with the newlyweds but with everyone present at the venue.
Everyone, that's impossible.
The light faded from Michelle's eyes, and she collapsed on the spot.
Please, do something.
She clung to her husband, but he was only crying. Facing the pathetic couple, John said,
If you had sincerely apologized for your rudeness, I could have forgiven you. But what did you do? Nothing but lies for self-preservation. I'm speechless with disgust.
Your son picked such a boring woman, right? Michelle yelled in defiance.
Weren't you frustrated that such a woman became your son's wife?
Do you hate Lily that much?
John's expression turned to one of pity. Michelle exclaimed loudly,
Yes, I couldn't stand her. That's why I was mean to her. For just that, why must I face such consequences?
Because your way of thinking is incompatible with mine.
John's voice was advisory, seeking to impart wisdom.
I wanted to understand who Lily was.
He said, looking at me. I was straightening up. John had an aura of an enlightened sage.
My son wouldn't choose a strange woman. So, I thought, this woman must have her charms. I wanted to discover those charms by talking to her.
What a waste of time.
Michelle scoffed, but John remained calm.
Lily is kind and hardworking. She has raised our grandson commendably on her own. My son's judgment was not mistaken.
That makes sense.
Michelle's husband seized the opportunity to curry favor with John. He seemed to be looking for a chance to seek forgiveness.
My wife is completely different. She lacks judgment in people. That's why she targeted Lily and Alex.
You are cowardly.
What?
Michelle's husband was taken aback. John's face slightly frowned.
Do you intend to push all the blame onto your wife? Firstly, you're also at fault for choosing a woman without judgment.
That is.
That's enough.
Michelle shouted. Everyone's gaze shifted towards her. Michelle twisted her lips.
President, you just want to side with Lily, don't you?
That would be obvious.
John nodded.
If that's the case, talking is pointless.
I agree.
John nodded again, and Michelle had already turned on her heel.
Let's go. It's useless to say anything more. From here on, we'll have to figure out how to rebuild the company on our own.
Don't talk like it's easy. With the president's pressure, all our clients have left.
Her husband's feeble attitude seemed to displease Michelle. Michelle said with a voice tinged with irritation,
Then we'll find new clients.
It won't be that easy.
Her husband also exited the room, dragged along by Michelle's resolve. Left behind, I sighed. Thank you, John.
No need for thanks.
John shook his head leisurely. And so, he spoke as if to impress upon me.
You earned my trust through your actions and strength, and they, through their actions, have earned my disappointment.
Yes. John hadn't sided with me unconditionally. It was trust in me that prompted his support. Meaning, if I were to stray from the right path, he wouldn't help me anymore. I will remember this, John. I thanked him. The downfall of Michelle and her husband was relayed through Emily. Emily has been staying with us, and since then, we've started receiving communications from Michelle.
Emily, come back home now. You need to help with our business.
No, Mom, I'm not coming back.
Emily's resolve was evident in her eyes.
I understand what you want, Mom. You want me married into a well-off family, right?
This child is.
It seems she hit the nail on the head, I thought, hearing Michelle's grumbling voice through the phone. Let me talk to her.
Are you sure?
It's fine, I assured her with a gentle smile. And Emily handed me the smartphone. Hello, Michelle.
How dare you speak to me like that?
I'm not enjoying this conversation either, I replied, deciding it was time to settle things with Michelle once and for all. Also out of concern for Emily, I made an effort to speak in a calm voice. I've decided to forget about your meanness.
What?
Her baffled response came through. I continued. I don't want to be involved with you any longer. That's why I'm choosing to forget you. Hating someone is exhausting and brings me no benefit.
Don't give me that noble talk.
Michelle snarled like a carnivore.
I won't forget you. I'll hold a grudge against you for life.
Her voice made me understand why John hadn't accepted Michelle's apology. It was a chilling voice. Goodbye then.
Give me back my daughter.
Emily is now Alex's wife and has taken the Tanner surname.
I'll make them divorce right now.
I informed her. That's impossible. Knowing she should be aware of this fact. Emily is pregnant with our son's child.
What?
Michelle fell silent. She isn't sure how to respond. After a pause, she spoke. Her voice is trembling.
Please, give me back my daughter. I don't care about the baby.
Are you still saying that? I sighed. Looking at Emily, she gently caressed her barely noticeable belly. Could she possibly think of abandoning her unborn child to return to her parental home? There's no way Emily would do that. How could a mother not understand this? Do you intend to separate Emily from her child?
If she has a child, she won't find another place to marry into.
Michelle selfishly remarked. It was evident that Michelle intended to use Emily for their convenience. Please don't involve yourself with Emily anymore.
I'm her mother.
Michelle's voice, though weak, was stubborn.
Give her back.
Don't be unreasonable. I'm hanging up now.
Hold on, she's pregnant. That must be a lie. She couldn't possibly.
Michelle was panicking.
Let me talk to her again.
I'll talk to Mom.
Emily intervened, seeing the distressful situation. Despite being a delicate time for her, she was determined to speak to her mother. Reluctantly, I handed over the smartphone.
Hi, Mom.
Emily, it's a lie, right? That woman is lying, isn't she?
Mom, it's all true.
Emily's voice was calm yet firm.
I'm going to be a mother here, so I can't meet your expectations. And please don't call anymore.
Her voice carried a certain force. Michelle groaned, troubled, and soon her voice became muffled. She seemed crying.
Emily, please, we have no other way. Our home will be ruined. Then Dad and I will have nowhere to go. We've been abandoned by relatives. What should we do?
Thinking of a solution is what adults do. Handing back the phone, I added, "You brought this upon yourself." Michelle had to take responsibility as an adult for despising me and Alex simply because we were a single mother family. She had to face the consequences.
Wait.
Her voice was desperate, but I silently ended the call. Despite persistent calls, Emily, with a resigned look, turned off her smartphone. John was delighted with Emily's pregnancy.
I want to be part of that child's family this time.
Please, feel free to visit our home.
Alex proudly responded. Due to the growing family, we decided to move to a new home next spring. Although it's a bit far from the station and inconvenient, it has a spacious garden. We're excited about starting a vegetable garden and growing flowers through the seasons. Since then, Michelle has become significantly quieter. Occasionally, Emily's father contacts her, but it seems his messages are mostly cries about the failing company and grievances against Michelle.
My dad always blames others. I wish he would be more responsible.
Yay, he's going to be this child's grandfather after all.
Alex said with a laugh. Emily also smiled. Watching their affectionate interaction filled me with contentment. Life in the new home has been smooth. I've quit my job to focus on household duties. Emily continued to work until her pregnancy was well advanced, but now she's on maternity leave, staying at home. The baby born was a girl.
Mary, it's such nice weather today, isn't it? The flowers are beautiful too.
Emily cooed, and the baby in her arms smiled back. The girl named Mary looks like her father.
Which do you like more, Mary, the flowers, or Mom?
She smiles at both.
Well, she's happy because her mom is beautiful.
Alex joked, making Emily laugh. Let me hold her too.
Here you go.
I took my granddaughter Mary into my arms. She was newly born, a tiny life. Yet, I could feel her substantial weight in my arms. You're such a good girl.
Yes, thanks to you.
Emily's smile had evolved from its once carefree nature to one endowed with the intelligence of a mother.
John is coming over for the winter break.
Oh, then we need to start preparing. I handed Mary back to Emily and stood up.
I'll help too.
Thank you. Let's see, until the break we have. I glanced at the calendar. It was filled with various entries. Plans for the family, notes related to work. It felt like a testament to the passage of time that had flowed by.
I never thought my parents, who doted on my genius sister, would ever say I was unnecessary.
One child is enough for us. We don't need you, the underachiever.
Saying so, my parents kicked me out while I was just a kid. The one who reached out to me in my confusion was my uncle.
Sorry I'm not well off, but let's live together.
I took his hand without hesitation. My name is Emily. I'm currently 30 years old, but I have a complex past. It's all about family issues. But first, I want you to hear my story. I was born into a typical family, with a father working as a company employee and a stay-at-home mother. We lived with my paternal grandparents at their home, where my father's unmarried brother, who was my Uncle George, also lived. We started living together when I was 4 years old, and George was 24. Being single and living at the parents' house at around the age of 24 might not be considered unusual. But George had a reason he couldn't leave his parents' house. As a child, I didn't know the details, but it seems George had been frail since he was young. Even as an adult, he was often sick and couldn't hold down a job for long. As a result, he became a part-timer, able to work only a few hours, 2 days a week at most. He certainly couldn't earn enough for living on his own. Maybe he felt ashamed for still depending on his parents at his age because he always looked apologetic.
Really? You're such a burden.
My father often yelled at George, and I frequently witnessed it. Always when the grandparents weren't around. My grandparents loved their healthy son and their frail son equally, without favoritism. The cohabitation started because of my father's financial difficulties, so my father, who was also dependent on his parents, probably wanted to show some restraint in front of them. But when the grandparents weren't there, he always said terrible things to George, looked down on him, and snickered. George, with a sad face, never got angry or talked back. He just stayed silent.
Why don't you get angry?
I once asked him as a child.
It's true that I'm depending on my parents.
He answered with a troubled look. As a child, I thought that made sense, but now that I'm an adult, I think Dad is also depending on them, so he's not in a position to say anything. If I had understood that back then, I would have stood up for George. As a child who didn't understand, even though I felt bad when my father yelled at George, I couldn't say anything. Even though things were tense behind the scenes without my grandparents around, their presence brought peace. In front of my grandparents, George would relax and smile, and my father, regardless of his true feelings, never showed them. My mother was too busy caring for me and my sister Lucy, who was 2 years younger, to pay much attention to the relationship between my father and uncle. As a kid, I thought this routine would last forever. But then, everything changed abruptly. My grandparents died in an accident when I was 6 years old. Their passing left me incredibly sad and lonely. I cried a lot. My sister Lucy and I bawled together. I vividly remember George quietly shedding tears too. But what I remember most, something unforgettable, was my father's laughter. Yes, my father laughed. Despite his own parents' death, he didn't shed a tear, not when we rushed to the hospital, not during the funeral preparations. It wasn't about being stoic. Even as a child, I understood my father wasn't grieving. And then I became certain of it. On the day of the funeral, my father was laughing. He probably thought no one was watching, but I happened to look at him and saw his expression clearly. It wasn't laughter from overwhelming sadness or confusion. I could tell because I'm his daughter. It was a smile of genuine, unbearable joy. My father was happy about my grandparents' death. He probably thought of the various inheritances coming his way. His smile was so grotesque that it scared me, a child, into crying. He must have thought those were tears for my grandparents passing. George gently patted my head and stroked it. Looking up, I saw his eyes, red from crying but filled with a kind light, looking down at me.
How could Dad and George, real brothers, react so differently to their parents' passing?
It was a moment my unease towards my dad grew. Then, my father's behavior towards George drastically changed. First, my father's attitude towards George became noticeably hostile.
Why should I have to take care of a good-for-nothing like you? Be grateful I let you live here. If you can't pay rent or anything, I'm taking all the inheritance.
At the time, I didn't understand, but it was an utterly unreasonable declaration. Despite having a right to an equal share of the inheritance as brothers, my father claimed it all for himself as the head of the family. George could have stood up for himself or sought legal help, but he did nothing of the sort. Even though he looked sad, he never argued back or claimed his share of the inheritance.
Are you okay, Bailey?
Worried about my increasingly downcast George, I asked.
I'm frail and can hardly work, so it can't be helped.
He said with a weak smile. Day by day, as my father hurled abuse at him, my frail George became thinner and his complexion worsened. Yet, George always smiled at me.
It's okay.
Always. But 3 months after my grandparents passed away, George was ultimately kicked out of the house.
Get out, you good for nothing.
He was told, and without any objection or resistance, he left.
George, I don't want you to go.
I was sad about the farewell to my kind George and pulled on his arm, but he gently removed my hand and patted my head.
It's okay, Emily. You're a strong girl. You'll be all right without me.
But you won't be okay, will you?
George, frail and unable to work properly. How was he going to survive on his own?
It's okay.
With tears in his eyes, he looked at me and said that before he left. The separation from George was sad, but there was nothing a child like me could do. Moreover, I soon found myself in a situation where I couldn't afford to worry about someone else. 2 years after my grandparents passed away, I was just a regular 8-year-old attending elementary school. And then, when my sister Lucy turned 6 and was about to start elementary school.
In kindergarten, they said Lucy is really smart.
That's what my mother started to say, and it was the beginning of everything.
She might be a genius like me.
My father was over the moon, and he impulsively decided to have her take an IQ test. And the result was astonishing.
IQ 150. Definitely got my genes.
Turns out, she scored an impressive IQ of 150. I didn't fully grasp it, but I understood my sister must be something special.
Wow, Lucy, that's amazing.
Thanks, Emily.
Not really getting it, I praised her and she beamed with joy. Those were the good days. Until then, everything was fine. But then it all went downhill.
All right, let's get her into a good school.
My father declared, ready to act on his spur-of-the-moment decision.
Starting now.
Even my mother was surprised, but was swept up by father's inexplicable confidence.
She's a genius. She'll be fine.
And with that, my mother got on board too. Then, my sister started going to tutoring every day. Since it's my mother who's accompanying my sister, naturally, household chores tend to get neglected. Then my father brought it up.
Hey, since your mom and Lucy are busy, take care of the house yourself.
He said that to me. And that's how laundry and cleaning fell to me. After school, hanging out with friends wasn't an option. I had to head straight home to do chores, or I'd get yelled at by my parents. If I didn't do them right, there were days I'd be skipped for dinner.
We don't have time to take care of a failure like you.
I was told.
Why can't you score perfect marks?
I was yelled at by my father for bringing home a test with a score in the 90s.
Just try to be a little more like your sister Lucy.
My mother said, exasperated. Even if I scored well on tests or came first in the sports day, my parents wouldn't notice or praise me, just ignored me. They'd mechanically tell me to learn from your sister Lucy. And then they started saying things like this.
Well, it's hopeless for you. Lucy is a genius, but you're just incompetent.
Lucy really was a genius, rapidly advancing in her studies with just a short period of tutoring, and passed the entrance exams with ease. As that happened, my parents became even colder towards me. They spent money on Lucy. I wasn't given new clothes and had to struggle wearing the ones that had become too small. Lucy got to eat delicious food. I got leftovers. Lucy was taken on trips. I had to stay home. My parents blatantly doted only on Lucy.
This kid's gonna be a big shot someday. Then our retirement will be smooth sailing.
My father would say, laughing.
A doctor, maybe, or a lawyer, even aiming to be a politician wouldn't be bad.
Having a genius daughter, we're super lucky.
I was invisible in my parents' eyes. My existence, crying in Lucy's shadow, was forgotten. Then, when I was 10, my parents finally said,
We don't need you because the education for Lucy costs a lot.
What?
Confused by what that meant, my father said,
We're saying one child, Lucy, is enough.
You mean to live on my own? How on earth?
Well, I'll at least give you your uncle's contact. Take some money and figure it out on your own.
And with that, I was really given just a small amount of money and kicked out of the house. Crying and pleading to be let back in, I banged on the front door, but there was no response. The door remained closed. In despair, I headed to the station. Being 10 years old, I had enough knowledge to ride the train. Asking people for directions, somehow I made it to George's apartment. When he answered the bell, he had the same kind face I remembered. He was shocked to see me and let me in, and when I told him what happened, he was furious.
What are they thinking? No kidding.
Even though it wasn't me he was angry at, I felt so sorry and depressed. Wondering if I was just a burden, tears started to well up in my eyes. Then, a hand was gently placed on my drooping head. It was the same large, warm, kind hand I remembered.
It's been tough, huh? It's going to be okay now.
But what should I do now?
I'm still prone to illness, and my income is low, as you can see. I'm poor.
George said with a wry smile in front of me. But he seemed much stronger than when we lived together before. Maybe being away from my father had brought some change in his mindset. Looking straight at me, George smiled and said,
I'm sorry for being poor, but if you don't mind, I'd be happy to become your parent.
Really?
More like a foster dad in this case, I guess. I might not be much, but...
Before he could finish, I threw myself into his big chest. It was similar to my dad's, yet entirely different. George's embrace was incredibly comforting.
It's going to be okay now.
As I cried with relief, George gently stroked my back. It felt like having a real parent who poured love into me. From then on, I was raised by George. Sure, he was poor and still prone to sickness, and life was tough at times. But even in poverty, our home was filled with smiles. I had almost forgotten how to smile when I was with my parents, but living with George, I began to smile a lot. A poor yet happy family. That's what we were. George gave me so much love. Wanting to repay his kindness, I did my best in everything. When I worked hard, George praised me. Even if the outcomes were poor, he praised the effort. That made me even more determined to do my best. The presence of my parents, who never praised me, eventually faded from my memory. Growing up under George's care, 20 years flew by in no time. Now, I am 30 years old. And now, the familiar faces stand in front of me. Mom, Dad.
It's been a while, Emily. Have you been living well?
The one smiling is my father, whom I pushed to the far corners of my memory. He's aged considerably, with hardly any hair left. My gaze towards him is icy. It's only natural, thinking, what do you want now?
Well, let's put the past behind us and get along as a family from now on.
Despite my icy gaze, my father said this without flinching. What? Naturally, this was my response. What? Get along as a family. Don't joke with me.
You really are a failure. Always had a bad mouth. No help for it. I'll start re-educating you from now.
No, thank you. Please leave. I push back my father as he tries to enter the apartment. And then my mother joined in.
Emily, don't be stubborn. Rely on us. Living in such a run-down apartment, you mustn't be leading a decent life.
It's none of your business. Please leave.
Don't be stubborn. Just let us in.
No, leave.
Let us in.
Go away. What's with them? If my memory serves right, they are in their mid-50s. Their strength should be waning, yet they are unexpectedly forceful. No, it makes sense. 2 against 1. I'm obviously going to be overpowered. It reminds me of those days playing foot wrestling as a kid. As I was musing, my father's foot reached the entrance. Heave-ho! I pushed back with all my might, like a foot wrestler.
Whoa.
Oh my gosh.
Caught off guard, both of them fell to the ground. Accordingly, I ended up looking down on them. You're so annoying.
What?
I'm busy. Can't you just go home?
What kind of way is that to speak? What do you think of your parents?
The moment you abandoned me, I never thought of you as my parents.
But we raised you till you were 10.
Till I was 10, huh? The only decent upbringing I had was when my grandparents were still alive.
But you were still able to live, weren't you?
That's no reason for you to act whole high and mighty. As my parents stood up, rubbing their backs, they seemed to have shrunk in size. Even though they're just in their 50s, they looked aged beyond, almost like they were in their 70s. You said it yourself, didn't you? One child, Lucy, was enough. With a genius sister like that, there's no need for you to come see me.
That's not the case anymore.
My words twisted my father's face into a bitter grimace. Did something happen to Lucy? Did she become jobless?
She became a lawyer.
Well, that's great. Impressive, really. IQ 150 and all.
And then she disappeared.
Impressive indeed. As the story goes, Lucy smoothly entered law school, took the bar exam after graduate school. She didn't pass on her first try but eventually succeeded. It's a bit beyond me, but she completed her training and officially became a lawyer, or so they say. And yet, she vanished.
She said, "I won't take care of you two," and left.
Well, so you were abandoned. Congratulations.
Not congratulatory at all. That ungrateful girl, repaying our upbringing with betrayal.
Well, there was no love, was there? My parents thought they were doting on my sister, but from her perspective, it probably just felt suffocating. Parents who change completely based on an IQ number. Parents who placed excessive expectations. Parents who disguised their desires as love, pushing them onto her. No wonder Lucy got fed up.
My company went bankrupt.
Tough economy, huh?
There's hardly any severance pay, and the unemployment benefits are about to run out.
Good for you?
Not good at all. But it's too late to start over at a new company now.
Too hard, huh? I couldn't help but laugh at the lack of enthusiasm.
So, you need to take care of us.
The laughter dies instantly. No, I don't.
What? You're going to abandon your parents.
The only parent I have is George, who has been taking care of me since I was 10.
What?
My father looks bewildered by my words. Coming to this apartment means you knew I was living with George, right? What's there to be surprised about now?
You think of him as your parent.
The George who showered me with love. He's my dad. You two never gave me any love, so you're not my parents. My parents looked at me in astonishment. Despite his frail health, George worked hard. He struggled so I wouldn't have to. I worked really hard to repay that kindness.
So, you're doing some decent work.
Sort of. As I shrugged, my father grabbed my shoulder tightly. Let go.
So, you're angry and you're embarrassed. Oh.
Listen to what I'm saying.
No need to say more. I understand perfectly. You were feeling lonely, huh? And now you're sulking. That's right. Always being not favored because of your sister. No wonder you're sulking. But now that you're with us, you're all happy and bashful. So, you're emotionally closed off.
Don't make things up.
Relax. From now on, we'll be together as a family.
I couldn't make sense of it. Is my father already suffering from dementia? I stared blankly at my parents for a moment, gradually finding their foolish faces amusing.
What are you laughing at? Happy, aren't you?
No way. Just so you know, I haven't thought about you guys once in these past 10 years. Thanks to George, I've been living very fulfilling days. My parents were shocked by my sudden laughter, but I continued. I went to university through a scholarship program.
Oh, You did. Then you must have gotten a good job.
Yes. I got a job at a pretty famous corporation.
Well, ain't that something?
And I got married through some connections.
Oh, then we must greet your husband.
No need.
Yes, we must.
It's impossible. He's abroad right now.
Oh, yeah.
Just so you know, George is also abroad.
George too. Really? What does that mean? I thought given you were living here alone, and given how frail he must have been, he may have passed away by now.
Don't just assume George is dead. My husband got an overseas assignment, heard it was a good place for recuperation, so George went along. He's completely recovered and is happily playing with my children.
Wait, you have our grandchildren.
The rapid influx of information seems to have nearly short-circuited my parents' brains. As they blinked in confusion, I smiled brightly at them. At first, George was hesitant about living together with us, but he eventually agreed. We're all living happily together as a family.
Then, maybe we could go abroad too.
That's fine, but we won't live together or take care of you. Live on your own money.
That's impossible. Are you abandoning your parents?
You were the ones who abandoned me first. I finally snapped at their utterly selfish reasoning. My parents turned pale. I owe nothing to you, who abandoned me, but I owe a great deal to George. I plan to repay his kindness.
Such. At least send us some money.
George never touched the money I sent him, and he lived in this rundown apartment all this time. But he finally agreed to live with me overseas, so I came to finalize things.
What?
To think you'd show up on the very last day I'm leaving this old place. What a coincidence.
Huh, so you're leaving?
I've finished the paperwork, and I'm just about to return the keys. Then I'm heading back to my home overseas.
What about us? Are you abandoning your parents?
After my mother turned pale and asked, I nodded emphatically. Thank you for abandoning me. Saying so with a smile left them speechless. Really, thank you. Because of that, I'm truly happy now. With that, I walked past them. How does it feel, you who abandoned your daughter, to be abandoned by both your daughters? I asked one last question, but no reply came. I didn't wait for their answer and left, thinking this would be the real farewell with my biological parents. Afterwards, I returned to my home overseas. The effort I put in while living with George paid off. I managed to secure a job at a good company. Then, with an overseas assignment, I met a man and got married. George cried and blessed the marriage. And with the birth of our children and George joining us, I'm now living happily with my husband, my children, and my Uncle George.
And I wish I could find a wonderful man like your husband soon.
My sister Lucy says, laughing beside me as we watch the children play in the garden. Well, now that you're free from our parents' grip, I'm sure you'll find someone.
I need to get used to work first.
Why don't you try for a lawyer's license here?
I think I'll pass on being a lawyer. I've had enough of following our parents' orders. I want to pursue a career I'm passionate about.
That makes sense. Right after I was abandoned by our parents and left home, Lucy sent a letter to George. It contained complaints about our parents' twisted love and the pressure she was under. She wanted to come live with George too, but his financial situation couldn't support both of us. And most importantly, our parents wouldn't allow it. So, for the time being, we've arranged for her to live at our parents' home where she can get by, and we're making plans for her to move out once she's an adult. It was tough for her, but my sister managed to overcome the trials and gain her freedom. She left home taking advantage of the moment our parents were happy about her becoming a lawyer. Of course, I helped her with that. She secured a job here but is struggling with the language and adapting to new things. But I'm sure she'll be fine. My sister Lucy, she just kept on living under our parents' roof. I tell you, I've never known anyone as patient and hardworking as her. She'll surely adapt here soon. I'm more worried about George. George is going to language school, I mentioned, and Lucy nodded happily.
Sounds good. It's never too late to start something new. He seems to be in much better health now, so we need to make sure he enjoys life from here on out.
Indeed. Our parents, who had taken everything from George, including his inheritance, got carried away with their spending and quickly ran out of money. They desperately tried to invest in their daughters, but now they've hit unemployment. They went ahead and sold the house to make some money, but it turns out they had some kind of renovation loan or something tied to the house, so they were left with very little in hand. Our relatives have apparently been hit up for money, but everyone has coldly turned them away, forcing them into a life of poverty. A relative shared with a wry smile that the constant quarreling between them is unbearable. Looking down on siblings or discriminating against one child over another is just unthinkable.
Indeed.
Lucy nodded to my words. I'll always protect you, Lucy, no matter what.
I've already been protected enough by you. Thank you, Emily.
When I was moved by my sister's grown-up words.
What are you protecting?
A hand was placed on my head. It seemed to have more wrinkles and felt smaller, but as warm as ever, making me squint as I turned around. Thank you.
Huh?
Seeing George standing there with a puzzled look, I smiled and said, Thank you, Dad. I love you.
Don't you dare have a child with another man, you cheater. You no good woman.
My husband's face turned red as he spat out these insults at me.
We're getting a divorce right now. Both of you, get out of this house.
His loud and aggressive voice made me close my eyes in disgust. There had been some misunderstandings between us and his family, but I never expected him to lash out so vilely. Moreover, his accusations were unfounded. There was no way I would cheat. The reason for this situation was the result of our daughter's blood test. Both my husband and I have blood type O, so our child should also have blood type O, but surprisingly, our daughter's blood type came back as type A. As soon as he heard this, my husband's face turned pale, convinced I had cheated, and he blamed me entirely. I would never cheat, but this is puzzling, and I want to investigate. Let's do a DNA test. When I calmly suggested this, my husband looked down on me with a sneer.
Yo, go ahead. It'll just prove your infidelity anyway. Just go ahead and hang yourself.
My husband, stubborn once he's made up his mind, gleefully offered his own hair for the test. 2 weeks later, the DNA test results arrived. I showed them to my still doubtful husband. His eyes widened slowly, and his brows, previously furrowed in anger, now drooped with confusion and worry.
This can't be. What's going on?
Looking him straight in the eye, I said calmly, "I don't know, but you wanted a divorce, so let's proceed with that. And we should tell your parents about this. They'll understand the truth." My name is Michelle. I'm 28 years old. I work for a company that deals in household goods in the HR department. I met my husband, Kevin, at a gathering through mutual friends. He works in a family-owned tech business with his parents. I decided to marry him because his easygoing nature was a soothing contrast to my structured corporate life. We got along well, but dealing with my in-laws was a constant source of stress. Because my in-laws think that a woman should join her husband's family after marriage, though I want to continue my job even after marrying, our views clash, leading to me receiving snide remarks every time we meet.
Are you still working? It's disgraceful for a woman to be gallivanting about. Quit your job and help out at home.
My mill often called me just to say such things. Dodging her was one thing, but it was quite stressful to spend my precious days off with her. I love my job, and recently I've been involved in hiring new talent. I look forward to building my career. Additionally, the relationships at my company are good, and although there are challenges at work, I never have unpleasant experiences. It's not just about the money. I want to continue working.
You should speak up, too.
When my mill turned her attention to my husband, he seemed evasive, but he respected my wishes.
If she wants to keep her current job, that's fine, isn't it? Dad's still healthy, and I'm not going to take over right away. Let us have our own family life the way we want it.
Hearing this, my mill narrowed her eyes in irritation and clicked her tongue.
You've become quite the back-talker, haven't you? Living together is obviously the best choice. Honestly, I wonder what your wife has been telling you.
To such a mother, my husband responded with a sigh of exasperation.
Seriously, even if she helps out, it's not like our sales are going to skyrocket overnight. Having her work would increase our income, and that would be more helpful.
While listening to this, it would be a lie to say that thoughts like, "Is it all about the money?" or "I wish for more affectionate words" didn't cross my mind. But I appreciate the fact that he was protecting the lifestyle I desire. I decided to turn a blind eye to the emotional aspect and be thankful to my husband. However, if such exchanges continue for months, half a year, and then a year, I can't stay the same. My mill, without giving up, keeps insisting on living together and retiring. It seems she really has a strong attachment to this idea and is not willing to compromise at all. Frustration must have boiled over because she exclaimed, "You're crazy for being so obsessed with going out to work. What are you after? A man? Yes, that must be it. You're neglecting your husband for a man at work, aren't you? How disgusting. That's just filthy," she ranted, letting her imagination run wild and working herself into a hysterical state. Calming her down was tough, and it took effort to placate her with tea and snacks. Of course, my husband never believed her fantasies. But he seemed to grow wary of my mill's constant nagging and tantrums, and he no longer stood up for me as he used to.
Look, if it's going to upset Mom this much, shouldn't we just give in? You must be stressed out with her raging all the time, Michelle. Eventually, I'll take over the business anyway, and it might be quicker to just quit your job and live with my parents.
Kevin murmured this while looking down at the dining table. After finishing, he held his head in his hands and sighed deeply. I can understand how he feels caught in the middle and tormented between his mother and me. However, I was shocked to lose the support of someone who used to stand by me. Why? Why would you say that too? I stopped washing dishes and appealed to him in a tearful voice.
Why, you ask? You see how my mother is. I'm tired of being constantly attacked by her just for continuing our current life. And you must be tired of it too, right? We've been dealing with the same thing for over a year now. Do you still want to keep working despite that?
Indeed, I had reached my limit with the escalating sarcasm and verbal abuse from my mill. But my job is an important part of my life. I really don't want to let it go. And considering my mill's nature, living together could just start a new phase of harassment. Yes, but you're her son, right? I want you to convince her. You said it was beneficial for us to have my income. Don't just cave into your mother. There's no guarantee that living together will solve everything. Tears were welling up in my eyes, but at the same time, I was clenching and trembling my fist. As well as feeling sad about my husband's betrayal, anger was bubbling up inside me. Then, Kevin, clearly irritated, slammed the newspaper on the table and stood up abruptly.
Enough already. That's old news. Sticking to the same opinion won't solve anything. You're stubborn and selfish.
Wait, you say what suits you and flip-flop when it doesn't. That's dishonest. I retorted strongly as he tried to leave. Our day ended with such argumentative exchanges. I was exhausted and went to bed early, leaving the chores half done. Why had things come to this? The issue with my mill was bad enough, but what was really painful was how my husband's attitude has changed. If he drifted away, I would be completely alone and unsupported. Feeling utterly alone with no one to support me, I had to stand firm in my beliefs, which was an incredibly daunting experience. Our relationship had been strained since that fight, but a few weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. After feeling unwell for days and being urged by colleagues to see a doctor, I discovered I was 2 months pregnant. Kevin was happy about the news. He then became more attentive to my health.
If it's a boy, he could be my heir. If it's a girl, I hope she's as cute as you. Michelle, you've been managing both work and household chores, but this is an important time, and you shouldn't overdo it.
Moved by his kind words, I was touched for a moment. But just when I thought everything was going well, my husband bluntly said the very thing I didn't want to hear.
Yeah, how about you resign now? Work might be too much during pregnancy, and this is a good chance. If we live with my parents, my mom will take care of everything so you can relax.
I felt my head heat up with anger at his words. Had he forgotten all our discussions and arguments? How could he say such a thing with a smile? Don't be absurd. This is not a good opportunity. It's like you're using the baby to force me into compliance. We didn't have a child for that reason, did we? I'm not quitting my job. As I ranted, Kevin looked troubled.
Calm down. Why are you so angry? It's common for women to quit after getting pregnant.
It's common, but my company has maternity and parental leave policies. I plan to take maternity leave, then return to work. If I quit now, we'll lose the income during the leave. Kevin listened to my persuasion absently at first, but he suddenly became attentive towards the end. It seemed like the financial aspect caught his interest.
Oh, so maybe quitting after the parental leave could work. Let's just take the leave for now and decide later.
He said that in a vague and non-committal tone, then he looked away from me, looking at my husband turning on the TV with an indifferent face. I couldn't help but sigh. I hadn't realized before we married, but I never thought he could be so opportunistic and materialistic. I must be stronger going forward. A few months later, I went back to my parents' house for childbirth. I wanted to avoid any interaction with my in-laws and Mill around the time of the birth. My parents were very worried when I told them about my Mill and husband, and they were even angrier at my husband than I was.
You can't trust someone whose words change so frequently. You absolutely shouldn't stay with him. If this continues, it might be worth considering a divorce.
My mother must have been really upset about my husband, for she spoke in a low voice while forcefully handling the knife she was using to cook. Even I, who had actually had a big argument with him, felt overwhelmed by her intensity. Thank you, but he's not a bad person as long as his mom and family don't interfere. Life will change once the baby is born, so I want to wait and see how things go. I said this, and my mother sighed worriedly.
You're patient, which is good, but you tend to bottle things up. If it gets too much, you must tell us immediately, okay?
Yes, I understand. I felt my mother's strong love as I said this, and months later, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. We named our daughter Miriam. I continued to live at my parents' home, preferring it instead of being near my in-laws. And after a year, when I found a daycare, I returned home and resumed working. During my stay at my parents' home, my husband visited occasionally to see our daughter, but we never discussed living together with his parents or resigning from work again. Rather, both of us avoided the topic. My mother never showed her anger in front of me but pressed him indirectly. Now that the family is growing with the birth of the child, please support Michelle and the child properly. While emphasizing please take care of them, she exerted pressure indirectly. Upon returning to the house where I lived with my husband, I found that neither he nor my Mill had changed, and Mill would barge into our home to see her grandchild and berate me, saying, "Enough is enough. How can a woman who has given birth not live with her husband's family and still keep working? There's a limit to being stubborn." As for my husband, he would just make non-committal remarks like, "Well, parenting has its ups and downs. It will all work out eventually," brushing everything off with casual comments. And just like that, 2 years flew by. My daughter's growth was remarkable. She could then walk around freely and has even started to talk a bit. I continued working part-time while sending my child to daycare, without living with my in-laws. My husband seemed too accustomed to both his mother's tirades and my arguments, merely watching TV impassively during our disputes. I no longer had any expectations of him. I hoped that someday, with my own strength, I would be able to convince them, and I was waiting for the right moment to do so. One day, my daughter Miriam fell ill. She developed red rashes all over her body and cried uncomfortably, whether in pain or itchiness. Realizing the seriousness, I took emergency leave from work and rushed her to the hospital. They suggested a blood test just to be cautious, so I requested the necessary tests. When asked about her blood type, I said we didn't know, so they included it in the tests. I thought it was unnecessary, but the doctor recommended it as a precaution, so I reluctantly agreed. The diagnosis revealed that the rash was atopic dermatitis, and specific medication was prescribed. It was good to understand the inflammation and how to treat it, but the issue was the blood type revealed by the test. My husband and I are both type O, and logically our child should also be type O. I was reluctant about the blood type test because I thought it was unnecessary, given what we already knew. Yet, what could this result mean? Feeling an indescribable chill, I returned home. I then calmly called my husband to discuss our daughter's atopic dermatitis and showed him the blood type test results. Isn't it strange that we're both type O, but Miriam is type A? I asked him while looking down. He became furious, raised his voice, and said,
"This means divorce. You must have cheated at work."
Shocked by his aggressive manner, I flinched. Wait, this is just a report. There might be a mistake in the test results.
No way. Having a child with another man, how? My mother said your obsession with work was because of another man, and she was right. Pretending to be a career woman while messing around with men, what a player.
My husband, with his face turning bright red and spitting, hurled insults at me. Overwhelmed by the loudness and violence of his voice, I felt a deep revulsion and instinctively closed my eyes. The harshness of his words and his baseless accusations filled me with disgust and shock. Stop talking like that. I would never cheat. You know I've been going back and forth between work and home every day. Don't you trust your own wife?
There's no trust or crap to talk about. The test results here say it all.
Kevin yelled, aggressively slapping the paper with the test results. It seemed like we were completely failing to communicate. I had completely misjudged my partner. That was a painful realization to me.
I won't raise someone else's child. I don't even want to see the face of a child born by such a worthless woman. Get out of this house, both of you, right now. And since you cheated, expect me to sue for alimony.
His shouting filled the house, waking Miriam in the next room, who started crying. As her rash had not yet subsided, I could only imagine how uncomfortable she must be feeling at that time. While I was distressed thinking about my daughter, my husband was forcefully trying to evict us from the house, piling our belongings on us right then and there. In a panic, I grabbed my valuables and the medicine prescribed by the hospital. Then, at the doorway, I confronted my husband one last time. Please listen to me. This is too strange not to investigate. If it bothers you that much, let's do a DNA test. Hearing this, my husband looked down on me arrogantly.
Fine, do it. It'll just prove your infidelity. Go ahead and hang yourself.
He stubbornly insisted, eagerly offering his hair for the test. We were abruptly forced out of the house, after which we headed to my parents' home in a rush. It was a 2-hour journey by express train, and by the time we arrived, I was exhausted. My mother was shocked to see us and furious upon hearing the story.
This is outrageous. To unilaterally decide and kick you out. Something's wrong. The blood test is indeed strange, but as a couple, you should work together to find a cause. Send the husband back to his parents.
My mother, having said that, gently applied ointment to her daughter, who was still itching, and soothingly said, "It must have hurt, and you were scared, weren't you? Poor Miriam, you haven't done anything wrong." I apologized to my company and took leave, focusing on caring for my daughter while staying with my parents. I also sent my husband's hair for DNA testing and waited for the results. Given that I hadn't cheated, the blood type issue was genuinely puzzling. Though I hated to think of it, even if my husband had been unfaithful, any child should have been from his mistress, which should not lead to this situation. After a little over 2 weeks, the DNA test results came. Together with my mother, I slowly opened the envelope. The document contained surprising information. Of course, Miriam was undoubtedly the child of my husband and me. It also confirmed my blood type as O. However, my husband's blood type was revealed to be type A. I went back to the house I had been expelled from to share this fact. Anticipating trouble, I decided to leave my daughter with my mother.
What are you doing here, you bitch?
My husband, who was at home, greeted me coldly, but I remained calm and showed him the test results. His eyes widened slowly as he looked at the paper, his anger shifting to confusion and anxiety.
That can't be. How is this possible?
He had always believed he was type O. Of course, there was no reason to lie about such a thing, and my husband himself must have believed that he was indeed what he had always thought he was. Looking directly at my trembling husband, I spoke in an even tone. We should discuss this with your parents. Surely the truth will come out. To my surprise, my husband nodded in agreement. He had previously mentioned both his parents were type O. There might be a lie in there. The tension and fear of uncovering a secret about his birth seemed to shrink him. He appeared entirely different from the man who had verbally abused me. Heading to his parents' house, it seemed he had already discussed our daughter's blood type and my alleged infidelity, judging by the icy stares from his mother.
Why are you with that loose woman?
She showed her disgust openly. My husband presented the DNA test results to her with trembling hands.
It's not the time for such talk. Look at this. You and Dad both said I was type O. Why does it show type A?
She slowly took the paper and stared at it intently, her face strained. Then, we were led to a back room and seated on a sofa. Facing us, she sat upright, her demeanor formal and silent. She seemed to have something to say but hesitated, biting her lip and looking down.
Why are you silent, Mom? Is there a reason? You're type O, Dad's type O, so naturally, I should be type O too, right?
My husband, trying to appear strong, was visibly shaken, his hands trembling under the table.
Well, but...
My Mill's face quickly lost its vitality, turning as white as a doll's. She frowned painfully, her lips turning purple and trembling.
Come on, why won't you say it? Tell me the truth.
Despite noticing his mother's condition, my husband persisted in his questioning. Then there were a few seconds of silence. Then my Mill let out a quiet sigh and slowly started to speak.
I've kept silent until now. The truth is, Kevin, you are not the child of your father and me.
Understandably, my husband was greatly shaken by this sudden revelation.
What? No way. What do you mean?
Naturally, Kevin was greatly flustered by sudden confession.
When I was about to marry your father, I had a careless affair with another man. You are the child from that time.
My husband was then 30. It must be a tremendous shock to see the belief in one's family crumble after all these years. He was visibly shaking from head to shoulders.
Does Dad know about this?
When my husband asked, his mother made a pained expression. And just from that look, the answer became clear.
You've hidden this from me and Dad all along.
My husband, mouth agape and on the verge of tears, continued to stare at his mother. She shed a single tear.
Kevin, it's true that we raised you dearly as our own child.
She had an affair shortly after her marriage and became pregnant with that man's child, continuing her life while deceiving her family that the child was her husband's. Yet, she maintained her love for her son throughout.
Even if you say that, I can't accept it. So, was your affair partner type A? Why hide such an important thing?
My husband, eyes red from holding back tears, stood up to confront her.
Probably.
She murmured, then fell silent, looking down. What a situation. The long-hidden secret of my mill came to light because of my daughter's blood type. Was it fate or divine retribution? At least Miriam is undoubtedly mine and my husband's child, leaving me with no further role. I was ready to watch the unfolding scene.
Can this really happen? True, I never verified my blood type through testing. I've always been healthy since childhood, so I never needed to. I had no choice but to believe Mom when she said I was type O.
I truly am sorry.
At that moment, my mill responded meekly. Quietly, the door to the room opened.
I've heard everything.
There stood my Phil, his expression beyond anger, chillingly impassive. He also had recommended letting me into the house and would make snide remarks whenever we met, but I didn't interact with him much because my mill's extremism was too dominant. His face, usually concerned about his business's future, now expressed a feeling of betrayal and disappointment towards my mill's concealed infidelity.
Hey, is it true that Kevin isn't our child?
My Phil asked in a low voice.
Were you listening?
My mill began to panic, realizing her private conversation had been overheard. While she fumbled for excuses, my Phil found the test results and scrutinized them.
You had an affair with another manual, and you've been deceiving me all these years.
My FIL's mask of forced calmness quickly fell away. His face turned bright red as he shouted at my mill with a demonic expression.
I didn't mean to deceive you. Kevin is our beloved son. Haven't we cherished raising him?
Yes, indeed. Deceived by you. I've been raising another man's child for 30 years.
With a loud bang, my Phil slammed the test results onto the table. At his fierce demeanor, both my husband and I involuntarily flinched. Unable to withstand his fury, my mill stood up to retort.
What now? It's useless to get angry about it. I haven't been in contact with that man anymore, and it was 30 years ago. It should be statute barred by now, right?
No statute of limitations. I never thought you could be such an unfaithful woman. The evidence of your affair is still standing right here.
My Phil shouted this while pointing at my husband. Caught in the shocking quarrel between his parents, my husband was speechless.
Given this revelation, I will end our marriage. We're getting a divorce. And you, Kevin, If you're not my son, don't ever cross our threshold again.
Wait, this can't be real.
Amid the ongoing quarrel between my in-laws, my husband was thrown out of the house. Feeling excluded, I also left and ended up discussing divorce with my husband at a nearby diner.
I understand you didn't cheat. It was all a misunderstanding. Miriam is definitely our child, so I take back the divorce. We should just go back and live together again.
Indeed, typical of my opportunistic husband. It was surprising that he came up with such a convenient proposal at this point. With a sense of disillusionment, I responded in a measured tone. Of course not. The misunderstanding is cleared, but words once said can't be unsaid. The things you said were too harsh, not only towards me, but calling Miriam a child of a worthless woman is unforgivable. I can't stay married to someone who can say such things easily. I'll proceed with the divorce.
Wait, don't say that.
He tried to stop me, but I gave him a cold smile. Isn't it for the best? You'll be rid of a wife who won't live with your parents or quit her job and doesn't listen to your family. You used to support me, but gradually you just followed your mother's words. I refuse to stay with an unsupportive husband. Let's handle the rest through a lawyer. Goodbye. I quickly stood up, leaving my bewildered husband alone in the bustling diner filled with happy families. Then, I boarded the train to pick up my daughter waiting at my parents' home. He returned to his family home only to be denied entry, as his father had said, and was fired from the family business. Naturally, I received a message stating that the discussion about him being the heir was now void. I ignored the message and immediately started looking for a law firm to proceed with the claim for compensation. Because my husband's actions were considered emotional harassment, I was able to claim $20,000 in compensation. After receiving the certified mail, my husband complained that he had no job and couldn't pay, but I firmly refused to reduce the amount. He had been complacent about eventually taking over the family business and becoming the president without saving any money. I knew well that he had squandered all his earnings, apart from living expenses, on alcohol and gambling. Moreover, we could no longer afford the apartment we lived in. Meanwhile, my ex-Mill, caught for her affair and facing a late-life divorce, managed to contact her past lover and sought refuge with him. My ex-husband got in touch with his mother, and they met up to go together to the home of the man who was his biological father, resulting from the affair. The man, who was the affair partner 30 years ago, was shocked and greatly bewildered when the woman from back then and the unexpected son suddenly showed up at his doorstep. He claimed not to remember such things from so long ago. He denied remembering the past incident, trying to evade the situation. My ex-Mill, catching him, insisted on a DNA test, claiming she would bear the cost. This scene unfolded at his doorstep, discovered by his current wife, leading to a confrontation among the three. The affair from 30 years ago was now exposed, and the biological father's wife, upon learning of his past infidelity, initiated a divorce, causing a commotion in front of my ex-Mill and my ex-husband. Following the argument between my ex-husband and me, there was a fight between my ex-husband's parents, and finally a confrontation between the affair partner of my ex-husband's mother and his wife. One chaotic scene led to another, resulting in a tumultuous situation everywhere. While this was happening, I rented a new apartment close to my parents' home and started living there with my daughter. I never wanted to return to the room I shared with my husband, nor could I rely on my parents' house indefinitely. My mother later encouraged me, saying, "Your husband is strange, and so is his family. It's good that you divorced. From now on, let's take good care of Miriam together." I felt relieved with her occasional assistance. After apologizing and explaining the situation to my company, I requested a transfer to a branch closer to my new home, which was granted due to my good work record. My work performance had been well regarded, so although it was regrettable to leave the main office, my transfer request was accepted, and I was able to return to work successfully. Just as I was starting my new life, my mother arrived at my house with an angry expression.
Can you hear me out?
It seemed she wasn't angry with me, so I let her in to listen.
Your ex-husband showed up at our house of all places. Can you believe it?
As my mother sipped the tea I made, her brows furrowed in irritation. I felt a sense of disgust at his shamelessness and sorry for the trouble caused to my parents' home.
He said he's unemployed and can't pay child support, so he came begging to you for help. When I told him you've already started a new life, he turned pale and trembled, shamelessly asking us for money too. He was so disgraceful that I quickly threw him out.
After venting, my mother seemed relieved and drank her tea quickly. "I'm sorry for causing trouble even to you, Mom." When I apologized, she gave me a generous smile.
It's okay. It's all over now. I warned him that I'd call the police if he came again, so he won't bother us anymore. You should forget about it quickly and focus on doing your best for yourself and Miriam.
My mother said this and gently tapped my shoulder. Encouraged by her warmth, tears welled up in my eyes. By the way, my mother is genuinely typo. Afterward, I received messages and voicemails from my ex-husband almost daily. It seems that my ex-husband, his mother, and her affair partner, all ousted from their respective homes, ended up living together out of necessity. When I saw the messages, I couldn't help but laugh at the bizarre combination. However, it was clear that those who had caused such turmoil couldn't possibly live together harmoniously. Indeed, it seemed none of them were getting along. He turned to me for help, brazenly seeking assistance in his audacity. I ignored everything and blocked his accounts and phone numbers. Yet, my ex-husband's refusal to accept reality persisted. Then, he even went so far as to show up at my current workplace. Fortunately, he never got the chance to confront me. Haunted by the repeated harassment, I had discussed his behavior with my company, which had taken preemptive measures. The moment the entrance surveillance cameras captured his presence, an alarm sounded throughout the office. I watched his actions through the office monitors. He was startled by the alarm and ran away from the approaching security guards. Witnessing my ex-husband's obsession, my coworkers unanimously sympathized with me and promised to prevent him from coming near in the future. Following that incident, another person visited my company. Surprisingly, it was my ex-Mill, with whom I should have had no connection. Unfortunately, she arrived during my lunch break when I was out of the office and confronted me in the hallway.
Finally found you. You need to take responsibility for once.
Her voice echoed in the office corridor. A passerby employee looked on with concern as someone from outside the company angrily confronted me, distorting her face in rage. "What do you mean, suddenly? Why have you come to my workplace?" As I stood bewildered, she, now considerably more haggard and pale than before, began to shriek at me in a shrill voice.
Of course, it's your responsibility. If only you hadn't looked into things like blood types, if you hadn't done that DNA test, none of this would have happened. Your unnecessary actions have ruined everything I've built up. Now it's all a complete mess.
Despite her own infidelity and decades of silence, she tried to shift the blame onto me. As she lunged at me, security detained her. The situation quickly escalated to the point where the police were called. Strangely, my ex-husband was also present, seemingly watching from the shadows, and it appears they were both taken in for questioning together. I desperately wanted them to stop. I had already begun a new life and was completely severed from my ex-husband through divorce. I'm begging you, just let me live a peaceful life, I thought to myself as I headed home the next day. Just like the previous day, there was someone lurking in the hallway at the office. This time, it was my ex Phil who showed up. I never told him where I work, so I wondered where he got the information. Feeling uneasy, I met his gaze and he said, "Well, I've made some noise and caused a lot of trouble in the past. After divorcing my wife and kicking out my son, I realized we're short-staffed at the company. Just because we're divorced, you're still part of the family, right? So, how about helping out at our place as an employee?" he said with a sly grin, spouting some nonsensical theory. "Please don't be ridiculous. I am your estranged son's ex-wife. We have no connection now. If you're headhunting, please look elsewhere." When I responded with at most calm, my ex-filial's smirk quickly turned into a sharp glare, and he aggressively closed in on me.
What? You're talking back now. When you were married to my son, you refused to quit your job or live with us, always having your own way. And now, even when I'm offering to hire you from scratch, after cutting ties with my son and wife, you still refuse. Geez, modern women are also presumptuous and annoying.
His unreasonable behavior was obviously out of place, and just like when my ex-mill showed up, security and the police arrived soon after and took him away. Thus, the days of the three related individuals intruding on my workplace came to an end, and I was finally able to be free, with my colleagues expressing their concern for me. I can now focus on my work peacefully. Regarding my ex-husband's family, it seems my ex-Phil tried to use the still family even after divorce theory on my ex-husband and ex-mill to salvage the understaffed business. Both my ex-husband and ex-mill, struggling with housing and finances, reluctantly agreed to help if it meant having a place to live and work. But a family so riddled with lies and betrayal couldn't possibly function well together. As expected, both their family life and business did not go well, with loud arguments echoing throughout the neighborhood day and night, leading to their ostracism by the community. Despite this, I am receiving the alimony payments consistently. Because I have a lawyer involved, they send reminders whenever the payments stop. Likely, making the alimony payments is straining their finances to the point where they are living begrudgingly in debt. To repay the debt, their financial situation worsens and they are engulfed in a vicious cycle. My ex-husband seems to be exploited for cheap labor at his father's company. On the other hand, my life is looking up. With the expertise I developed at the headquarters, I am valued at my new workplace. I am praised for my fast and accurate work and have already gained the trust of my colleagues. Talks of promotions and greater responsibilities have already begun, and I am expected to excel even more than before. The environment is peaceful and cheerful, making me want to work here for a long time. My parenting is also going well. With Miriam in daycare during the day and occasional help from my mother, she is growing up fast. Regular visits to the doctor have gradually improved her eczema, providing some peace of mind. Her eager sharing of daily events at daycare is irresistibly adorable. Her third birthday is quickly approaching, and my mother and I are discussing how to celebrate it. Even though she is still young and may not remember, I want to give her a lovely and adorable celebration. Recently, my mother has been diligently knitting a handmade sweater for her.
I'll knit the cutest sweater in the world, so look forward to it.
My mother said, beaming with enthusiasm in front of me. I've started baking, making daily treats while preparing to make my daughter's birthday cake with my own hands. Strawberry cake is nice, but apple pie sounds good too. What do you think, Miriam? When I asked Miriam, she adorably responded, apple pie. Her cuteness made me smile involuntarily. There might be hardships in the long journey of life ahead, but I want to face them with a smile, trusting the people around me, carefully handling both my job and parenting. With Miriam by my side, everything feels manageable.
I'm Julian Orff, 58 years old. Currently, I'm working in the neurology department of a hospital in the United States. Taking advantage of my daughter Mia's short study trip to England, I also decided to take an extended vacation and return there after a long time. I wonder how many years it has been since. I visited the hospital where I have many nostalgic yet painful memories from when I used to work there. I had a coffee at the hospital's cafe terrace where I used to take breaks. Even though 18 years have passed and the outside view has changed a bit, the clear blue sky remains unchanged, and it reminded me of those words suddenly brought up by my ex-husband.
I choose a brilliant child born to a 23-year-old woman over a child born to you at late birth age.
I was stunned by his sudden statement. What do you mean?
You're a doctor. You should know about the high risks of late pregnancies.
You're not talking about the risks to the mother or the childbirth itself, but...
Right. It's about the child's capabilities.
What? Why bring this up now? You knew this from the beginning when we wanted children. That's why we went through fertility treatments.
Well, sure. I wanted kids too.
Then...
things have changed.
I don't get it. I truly didn't understand. We were a couple of doctors. I was a neurologist, and my ex-husband was a plastic surgeon. He opened a cosmetic clinic in London, marking a new start as a cosmetic surgeon, and at the same time, we began trying for a child. However, it wasn't easy, and after hoping for a child for 2 years, I finally became pregnant through fertility treatments at the age of 40. We cried tears of joy over the hard-won pregnancy, and my ex-husband became overly protective, saying, "Just until we reach a stable period." Seeing him like that, colleagues, friends, and our parents would jokingly say, "It's going to be even harder once the baby is born." Yet, a few months later, I found myself in the situation that led to the opening words.
You really didn't notice.
The
things I've been doing outside. You knew, right?
It was impossible not to have noticed. However, the reality was that our family was about to grow. This can't go on, I fought, and often waited up late to talk to my ex-husband when he returned home. That day, I was waiting for him again. "Welcome home."
You're awake.
Yeah, I thought we should talk. Whether he knew my feelings or not, a dismissive "oh" was all I got in response. Today, I got a notice about a dad's class at the hospital. Are you coming?
Oh.
Most husbands are attending this class, so I thought Thomas would.
I'm not going.
Then.
I'm not interested, so I won't go.
Not interested.
I'm a doctor, you know. I've seen countless child patients. I don't have any issues with kids. So what's the problem?
But raising our own child from a newborn is completely different. I'm a doctor too, but I have no clue about childbirth or parenting.
That's your perspective. I'm different. I'll be fine. So, I'm not going. Are we done here?
My ex-husband silently pressured me to continue speaking without hiding his bored demeanor, but I decided to ignore him. A colleague told me they think you're cheating.
What?
They saw you in downtown last week, walking arm in arm with a young woman, heading into a department store, and looking like you were enjoying shopping.
Really? So, this person was stalking me?
No, they just happened to be at the same department store for their own reasons.
But they reported this supposed cheating to you, right? Using the word cheating without knowing if it's true. If it's not true, that's defamation, you know.
What? That's not the point.
It is the point. You're suspecting me based on a story that might not even be true.
So, it's not true.
Who knows?
What?
Our clinic is all about beauty, so naturally, we have a lot of young female staff. Do you know how scary women can be to each other? To keep the peace, I have to treat everyone equally, and as the owner, it's my job to provide meals, shopping trips, and little breaks to appreciate their hard work, right?
So, you're doing the same with other staff members, not just the one the colleagues saw.
Well, you could say that.
And you're neglecting our family for that.
Look, without them, our clinic wouldn't run. They support our income, which means they also support our household finances. Saying I'm neglecting our family because of that sounds a bit off.
My ex-husband smirked as he spoke. The words coming out of his mouth are disgusting. Healing time, what's that? Does sneaking into hotels count as healing time? The colleague also said they saw my ex-husband entering a hotel with a woman. The hotel mentioned was one my ex-husband often used for dining. The moment I heard it, I immediately thought, this is definitely cheating, but I couldn't say it. Probably, after opening his clinic, my ex-husband began doing these things secretly. Having money, my ex-husband started to direct it outward all at once. Since then, he has become less secretive, or whatever the reason. He spent even less time at home. And then, back to that opening statement. One day, when he came home, he suddenly called out towards the bedroom where I was.
Come out here.
I was puzzled and opened the door. An overly young, flashy woman with a smug smile was sitting on the sofa. Ah, this woman is the one, my colleague mentioned. My ex-husband responded to my faint murmur.
Quick on the uptake, aren't you? Yes. This woman will be my official wife from now on. And she's already pregnant.
So, what happens to me?
We're getting a divorce.
Do you really think we can decide that easily?
It's not on a whim. I have to take responsibility for her.
What about your responsibility to me?
Oh, you mean money?
What?
I'll give you plenty of money. There's the divorce settlement, after all. I could even give some to the child in your womb, a child born from an outdated womb. I'll give enough money to cover whatever little issues might arise. So just sign this and disappear, will you?
Saying that, he placed the already filled out divorce papers on the table in front of me. The woman smirked at me and whispered in a low voice, "Creepy." I couldn't stand being in the same space with these people, and more importantly, I realized it was utterly impossible to think about a future with my current husband and our home after such an event. After that, the process went smoothly. We agreed to involve lawyers in our discussions, and I kept the divorce papers. I didn't want to expose my unborn child to this environment for even a second longer, so as soon as the discussion was finalized, I quickly packed my necessary belongings into a suitcase and left the house. Then 18 years passed, and here I was back again, never expecting to have a chance encounter with this man. As I was lost in these thoughts, I noticed someone approaching my seat. The moment I turned to look,
Julia.
A voice I never wanted to hear again vibrated through my eardrums. There he was, my ex-husband, whom I hadn't seen since that day. It's been a while. I couldn't avoid greeting him, so I muttered something neutral. He took a step closer, chuckling softly before speaking again.
What? Came crawling back from America.
What?
You went back to America after that, right? Felt the limit and ran back to your alma mater for help.
His twisted smile, mocking in nature, vividly showcased his true character, reminding me of my last image of my ex-husband, and I felt a heavy weight in my gut. Just visiting here, my daughter came for study in England, and we came here together today.
You mean the child from back then?
Who else?
What do you mean? You're coming with her. What's wrong with that girl? Is she sick?
What are you talking about? I was speechless at his outrageous remark. The words about older pregnancy and choosing a brilliant child that my ex-husband had said came flooding back, causing my chest to ache anew. As I struggled to find words, footsteps approached from behind.
Mom.
Mia, you are here.
Who might you be?
She must have looked like a stranger accusing me of sitting down and shrinking. Mia, while keeping her guard up to the maximum against my ex-husband, checked out the man. My ex-husband, upon seeing Mia for the first time, gave me a curious look. I said to my ex-husband with a small laugh, "This is Mia North, my daughter, and also your daughter by blood." It's no wonder my ex-husband was shocked to his core. Just by her appearance, Mia was tall and had a beautiful, radiant look. If he had been keeping up with the rumors, my ex-husband would have heard about her. Carefully choosing his words, my ex-husband asked,
Me and North, by any chance? The one in the surgical research lab.
You are correct. Me and North is temporarily studying in the surgical research lab. I couldn't help but laugh at my ex-husband's astonished reaction. The child he had abandoned in the womb had become an outstanding medical student over 18 years. Moreover, he had assumed the child from an older pregnancy would be inferior or even born with some minus. He could never have imagined that such a child would turn out to be a beautiful medical student. You must be surprised. You never would have imagined that the child of the woman you dumped by spouting words of inferiority to older births would turn out to be so perfect, huh?
That is.
And Mia, she's accelerated her education. So at 18, she's already a second-year medical student. She's finished college already.
What did you say?
I couldn't help but smile at my ex-husband's bewildered response. Not familiar with the American education system.
Shut up.
Thomas, you're the one who knows things, so I thought you'd know. I apologized lightly, and he is a proud man who bites his lip. Even during our marriage, he never hid his displeasure at my slightest remark, and his attitude hasn't changed even as he approaches 60, prompting a small sigh from me. This girl, you see, graduated from high school at 15 and college at 17. Being a single parent, she really did an amazing job. She's a daughter I'm incredibly proud of, both inside and out. That was truly how I felt. Mia is my pride and joy. However, the man in front of me couldn't help but hurl an insufferable insult.
PFFT. Probably just used your doctor's clout to squeeze her in somewhere, right?
Did you just say something that dumb?
You're a professor or something over there. With that kind of power, you could get her into high school, college, medical school, whatever.
Don't belittle me.
What did you say?
Don't lump me in with you.
Huh.
That's you, isn't it? Squeezed into the bottom rung of a fancy high school, barely making it into college, let alone medical or dental school. Your parents used their money to barely get you into a low-ranked private medical school in the countryside.
What? How do you know that?
Over there, I met someone who went to your middle and high school, and I heard all about it. The unexpected boomerang had my ex-husband frantically trying to find out who it was, asking, "Who told you?" I ignore my annoying ex-husband and take a sip of the coffee in the cup in front of me. I felt my wispy heart calm down a little at the familiar taste of it. One of the hospitals affiliated with the university is run by a classmate of mine. They wanted me to work at the hospital right away, but I was pregnant, remember? So, I was asked to take on some university classes while working part-time at that clinic, and it just so happened they knew about me and asked me how Thomas was doing. Of course, I didn't know this person at all, but when I asked why they knew me, it turned out they had researched my background upon hearing that an excellent neurologist was coming, and that's how they learned about my marriage and my ex-husband. I heard quite a bit, you know, just because you're a bit rich, causing trouble, bullying, flaunting your money to play around with girls. My ex-husband's family owned land in the countryside, a so-called wealthy household. So, he had power and money in his hometown, and was an only child who could do whatever he wanted. He was just the typical bully type, just like in the comic books.
Who did you hear that from? Spit it out.
It doesn't matter who, it's well known, right? With your behavior, anyone from your classmates or friends would say the same, wouldn't they? I could tell he still wanted to say something, but I kept talking. That person told me, Thomas was just using you.
What?
At first, I was like, what are you talking about? But after listening, I understood clearly. You, coming from the countryside, and me, who had always lived in New York, meeting at a new workplace. I didn't know anything about you. To you, someone who didn't know your past, was convenient, right?
Fine. If it's out, then it's out. Whatever. Yes, we both started at a new place. I had just come from the countryside, and no one knew me. You, who also just arrived, especially didn't know about my lousy past or character. You were convenient for me. So what?
Facing my ex-husband's defiant admission, I pressed on. It's not just that, is it?
What is it yet?
You wanted a brilliant child, a child to negate your complexes. A perfect child is why you wanted me. No, you wanted my status and genes, right? You wanted the genes and status of someone the complete opposite of you, right?
What the hell are you talking about in front of the kid?
What? In front of the child?
This isn't something to discuss in front of her.
Does he still try to protect his pride? The shallowness of this man made me sick to my stomach. Don't worry, Mia knows everything.
Does she know all this?
She knows that you wanted a brilliant child and left me and Mia. She knows about your past and everything up to now.
What? You told her everything?
I simply told the truth. The father was gone before she was born, and she was raised by a single mom. It's not like there was nothing to tell. Besides, someone as smart as Mia couldn't be fooled anyway. Doesn't make any sense, echoed loudly through the quiet cafe terrace from my ex-husband. Then, having been silent until now, Mia began to speak.
You are not cool.
What did you say?
I'm asking if you realize how pathetic you look.
Huh? Why do I have to be lectured by a kid like you?
Because even someone you consider a kid thinks the way you live your life is pathetic.
He probably never expected to be told such a thing by a child. My ex-husband was clenching his jaw, his face turning bright red. Mia, observing him with a dispassionate gaze, continued.
Just like Mom said, I know everything. Not just about the past, but what's happening right now too.
Huh?
I didn't expect you to be begging the professor I'll be working with. Heard your clinic went under?
How come?
The decline in customers due to multiple failed cosmetic surgeries, fraudulent accounting, investment failures. Well, it all started 18 years ago, didn't it?
How can you even say that?
It all began when you left Mom and chose a new partner. Oh, wait, no. It started when you were blinded by the clinic's quick cash and swayed by women dazzled by money. Their presence made you greedy, leading to your downfall.
My ex-husband, hit right on the mark by an 18-year-old, turned an even deeper shade of red, eventually starting to tremble.
Really high on your pride, aren't you? Why not admit it? I'm a scumbag. A scumbag who ruins people's lives. That's why it's all coming back to you now, see?
What? Ruin people's lives? Thanks to my leaving, Julia became a professor in America, and you're attending medical school at 18, thanks to skipping grades. It's all thanks to me.
What? Don't be ridiculous. That's just the outcome. Not thanks to you. Indeed, the divorce may have been a catalyst, but Mom being accepted into an American university so quickly was the result of her efforts. And my attending medical school after skipping grades is not only due to my efforts but also because Mom always cared for me. It's precisely because she always considered others and worked hard that so many good things returned to her. People who easily discard others and even destroy their workplaces end up in this pathetic reality where they must protect their pitiful pride despite everything.
Seeing Mia like this was a first for me. Though she could get heated in discussions due to differing opinions, I had never seen her raise her voice in anger at someone. She must have processed the stories she heard from me and others while keeping her emotions at times. But this was about her circumstances, not imagining she viewed and fought about me in such a way. However, even faced with Mia's undeniable logic, my ex-husband couldn't contain his emotions.
Huh? First off, you wouldn't even exist without me. It's all thanks to me, damn it. Wow.
How could you say that to your child?
It's okay, Mom, I don't mind. I am indeed grateful to have been born. But well, to be precise, that gratitude is towards the grandparents who supported you for so long.
What?
He probably didn't expect a conversation to turn to his parents. He looked as if he had been shot with a pellet gun, frozen in place. After our divorce, your parents actually kept in touch with me and cared about Mia. Well, you wouldn't know since you were cut off from your parents after the divorce, right?
Huh? My parents are still in touch with you. You must have influenced them to cut ties with me to get them on your side.
Oh, no way. They just saw through their son, who quickly discarded a smart and beautiful wife for a younger and foolish woman, led astray by appearances.
What the hell are you talking about?
You barely graduated from medical school you got into through money, struggled through extra personal tutoring, and barely managed to get your medical license after repeating a year. Then, you somehow squeezed into a general hospital where you never stood out, overshadowed by senior doctors. Your pride couldn't stand that, so you nagged your parents into opening a cosmetic clinic for you. Then, carried away by the booming cosmetic surgery market. So it was a harem, surrounded by women. And then you got a nurse more than 20 years younger than you, abandoned your family, and you even destroyed the clinic you built with your parents' money for these women. How do you expect your grandparents to help with that?
Overwhelmed by Mia's rapid-fire recounting of his dark past without stumbling, my ex-husband was left sputtering, unable to form coherent words. He looked at Mia with a dumbfounded look on her face, and suddenly, either calmly or with a bug in his head, my ex-husband began to say the most outrageous things.
Then you reconnect me.
What?
You heard in the lab, right? About how I've been struggling to find work since the clinic closed.
Considering you're begging at the former workplace of your ex-wife, I guess you're having a tough time.
Right. Everyone's cold to me. So, you're excellent and promising. And if you, the daughter of Julia, trusted by everyone around, say you want to help your dad after an unfortunate separation, they'll surely lend a hand out of sympathy.
While making such abnormal statements and lamenting like a tragic heroine, Mia and I exchanged looks and sighed. How pathetic.
Why?
Resorting to begging a child you abandoned and never even thought of till now is just disgraceful, embarrassing, and insane.
Shut up. What do you know about me?
I don't know, and I don't want to know, and I never plan to understand. A doctor who can't empathize with others, only thinks of himself, and ends up causing medical accidents. I don't want to understand that. Anyway, it's ridiculous to beg Mia. Don't you have a capable child? Just ask them.
Mine's impossible. Barely managed to push her into a mid-tier private girls' school.
Oh, money again. Solving things with money again, huh?
What? If I solve it with money, there's no problem.
My ex-husband quickly became heated and defensive, his face turning red again as he relived his past mistakes. Fundamentally, such matters shouldn't be resolved with money. It's wrong for that thing to settle people's ends with money. But I think there are things that money can't solve.
What the hell is that?
Did you know one of your medical accident victims was a relative of my professor?
Huh.
I think it was the child of my mentor, Professor Linda's niece. They had surgery at your clinic and ended up with facial muscle abnormalities.
You mean that case I couldn't solve with money?
Those inconvenient cases you ran away from by closing the clinic seem to catch up. Medical circles are connected somewhere, somehow. I even got connected to your associates in America. Domestic circles. Whether my words were in his ears or not. My ex-husband, now pale and sweating profusely, froze, his eyes darting around and settled. It's okay. It will happen just as you imagine. Too scared to speak. No need to be scared now. It's your doing. If it's for your gain, others' well-being doesn't matter. Just try to maintain that dark spirit even behind bars.
Wait, I really am.
Your big hit might be sooner than you think. You were too busy securing your own job to notice you were being pursued.
It's a joke, right?
With such a malicious story, it's no joke. You don't need to look for work anymore. You wouldn't be able to work anyway.
It can't be.
If you think it's a lie, then keep thinking that until it happens. Spend quality time with your precious family. After saying what I needed to say, I touched Mia's arm to signal it was time to leave. Mia, touching my hand back, smiled softly. After that, Mia returned to USA after about 2 months of medical study.
England is awesome. The food is delicious. People are kind. The teachers and seniors are respectful, and the discussions are interesting. Seriously, I might consider moving back to England in the future.
Having experienced an immersive exchange involving England and its people, it seems Mia has developed a different perspective and feelings compared to her occasional visits back home. That's great to hear. I'll have to send my thanks to the teachers too. Make sure you do, Mia says, grimacing at the taste of the overly sweet American juice she's drinking for the first time in a while.
By the way, he got caught.
Yay. While Mia was studying abroad, my ex-husband was arrested. The failed cosmetic clinic had been involved in several medical accidents that entangled medical professionals, which apparently dominated the news and talk shows in England for days. I am sure Mia heard or saw the news. Mia went to England to study and came back with an unexpected story. But this is what being 18 is all about. Up until now, she's been too mature, trying too hard. Using one's abilities is indeed important, but medical practice accompanied by humanity, as I deeply feel after over 30 years as a doctor, is crucial. Medical acts are meant to aid people's lives, and the main focus should always be on the person. Going forward, Mia will surely grow significantly as a person. As a parent and a senior in the medical field, I'll silently support her from behind and walk with her when needed. My secret fan activity, it seems, will be a lifelong endeavor.
After receiving shocking news from my mom, my sister, who had eloped and gone missing years ago, had returned. I headed back home with my son. Sure enough, there were women's shoes at the house. Moreover, my sister Mary came out in her underwear. She laughed and said triumphantly to me, "Aha!
I scored a luxury high-rise in a wealthy husband. You poor folks can keep working your part-time jobs forever."
But then, a voice from behind her.
Too bad for you. Sleeping pills don't work on me anymore.
My husband, Mike, said this nonchalantly as he appeared.
Wait, are you trying to? She's trying to create a fait accompli with me.
He burst into laughter.
And what would that accomplish? The house is all in Sarah's name.
Yes, the high-rise we're living in belongs to me. I got it from an inheritance from my ex-husband. My name is Sarah Smith. I'm a 34-year-old working for an organization dedicated to preserving American classical culture. My husband, Mike, a former colleague, is also studying American classics in graduate school, 3 years my junior. He's currently continuing his research while working towards his PhD. His situation allows him the flexibility to do school and activity runs for our son, Joshua, in my place. But that's not all. Honestly, Mike is far better at household chores than I am. His cooking may not be elaborate, but it's efficient. Aside from his study space, he keeps the rest of the house clean with minimal effort. And he handles laundry and related tasks more delicately and meticulously than I do. I'll take care of your life. Can I ask you to handle the household chores? Those were roughly the words with which I proposed to him. Frankly, I fell for him precisely for these qualities. I'm just too busy to handle everything myself. As long as you don't suffer, continue your research, I said. Even his parents were surprised. They even asked if I intended to treat their son as a gigolo, a memory that now brings a smile to my face. But after discussing our feelings, living arrangements, and our child, we got married, and he became a stay-at-home husband. It was an unusual arrangement, but we were happy and got along well. Then, something unexpected happened. It was Tuesday afternoon. As I was about to leave work for the rare occasion of picking up Joshua in place of Mike, who was preoccupied with his dissertation, I suddenly received a phone call. "Hello, Mom, what's up?" It was from my mom. Our family home is far from the urban center where we currently live, a 5 to 6 hour drive away. Since getting married, we've been visiting them for only the summer or Christmas holidays. So, we usually kept in touch through messaging on cell phones. But direct phone calls were rare. Both my parents schedule the time for me because I'm busy at work.
It's serious, Sarah.
What's the matter all of a sudden?
Mary's come back.
Mary? Mary, that's my sister, 2 years younger than me. However, we haven't seen each other for over 10 years. She ran away from home when she was 18.
Apparently, her husband's company went bankrupt.
Bankrupt?
Yes, she was banging on the intercom, saying her husband had run away in the night after racking up a huge amount of debt.
and to avoid debt collectors coming after her, she used his signature without permission, got someone to sign a name, and filed for divorce.
An involuntary wow escaped my lips. So now,
I told her she couldn't stay with us, but she had the nerve to show up, and she left her daughter with us.
what? She left her behind.
Yes, she's so young. I asked her age, and I was truly shocked.
What shocked you so much?
When she arrived, I thought she was still in preschool, but she's just a year younger than Joshua.
What? A year younger than 9-year-old Joshua. Then she should be in the 2nd grade. And to think she looked like a preschooler. Mom, is she that small?
She's tiny and skinny, her skin is dry, and she's got chapped skin. For now, I've given her some snacks and let her take a shower, but she seems so uncomfortable.
My mom's voice sounded like she was holding back tears, as if she might break off her words at any moment. But I had to ask this. Mom, you're not going to kick her out, are you?
What are you saying? Of course not. No matter how good for nothing Mary might be, this child is our granddaughter. Her clothes are all tattered too.
That's good. So, Mom, where did Mary go after leaving the child? Yes, I had to ask that.
To your place, Sarah.
Why to my place?
It seems before coming to our place, she went to see some old friends, and somehow she was told you married rich.
I instinctively placed a hand on my forehead. Whoever it was telling half the story just causes trouble. Did they give her my address?
No, but it seems she got your work-related cell phone information.
My work-related cell phone. Well, that can't be helped. In my line of work, I sometimes have to use my work phone to some extent.
That's why Dad is hurrying over to your house now.
Dad is.
So please, hold the fort until then.
Wait, Mom, when did Mary leave there? Before I could get an answer, the call with my mom ended. It's just past 3 p.m. Picking up Joshua from school, then taking him to his lessons, waiting for him to finish, going shopping. Mike has been so absorbed in his work since yesterday that he won't be able to cook for tonight and all of tomorrow for sure. So, shopping is absolutely necessary. And even if he finishes writing, he's likely to fall asleep without eating. Usually, after staying up for about 3 days, he sleeps for a day and a half. But if I have to buy a lot of ready-to-make food, it looks like it will be past 6 p.m. before I know it. I'm worried about what will happen.
Wait, Mom has a sister.
Yeah, I have one.
I see.
In the car, after finishing the shopping, I decided to briefly explain the situation to Joshua. Surprised.
Not really. I mean, with our family, I figured there's always something.
Joshua, at 9 years old and in the 3rd grade, is quite bright and a bit mature for his age. Our slightly unconventional family dynamics meant he understood the situation quickly once explained. I guess he takes after his dad in that regard. As a child, I remember just squabbling simply with my sister. Compared to that, Joshua is calm and thoughtful. I'm a little worried. Well, yeah, there's definitely a lot.
Like what?
Where do I start? There are parts of the story that are okay to share with a child and parts that aren't. Remember the house where Mom and Joshua used to live?
Yeah, It's close to Grandma and Grandpa's place, right?
Mom's sister, well, she didn't like living in that town, and over a decade ago, she ran away with someone she loved.
Wow, that's kind of amazing.
Hey, Joshua. Yes, Mary ran away at 18 with the president of a startup who was nearly 40 at the time. It wasn't out of love, though. Mary was involved in compensated dating. Since she was in high school, neither I or Mary should have had any difficulty with money. My parents also saved enough money to send us to our preferred schools. I got enough money to buy what I wanted. But it seems that wasn't enough for Mary. She went off to a prestigious university downtown, but by the end of her first year, we got a call from the school administration. Guess what? Mary was pregnant at the time. When Dad, furious, demanded to know who the dad was, Mary confessed without hesitation. That man was the one she had just divorced without permission. Angered by both the compensated dating and her partner, our parents told Mary to leave. She left without a fuss and lost contact. If it had been just leaving, we might have tracked her through her health insurance. But she married the guy. When she became a man's dependent, we couldn't keep her feet at all. Once the initial anger subsided, worry set in. No news at all felt like a breach of duty, and my parents had many reasons to be angry. They became the subject of rumors at work and in the neighborhood, feeling shunned for raising such a daughter. How could you have raised a daughter who could do such a thing? My dad was supposed to be promoted to director, but that's off the table now. And other such grievances I heard were unpleasant to recall. However, something my mom said earlier caught my attention. The child Mary left is 8 years old. That means she's not the child Mary was pregnant with all those years ago. What happened to that child? I can't help but wonder.
Mom, you're making a scary face.
Responding to Joshua's comment, I said, sorry.
Is something bothering you?
Yeah, it's about your cousin. Eventually, we arrived back at the apartment, lugging the heavy shopping bags between us. But they were too heavy. So we decided to borrow a cart from the concierge at the entrance.
Miss Smith, your sister, Miss Jones, was here earlier.
The concierge informed us. Did you let her in?
We checked and copied her ID, just to be safe.
Oh no, I covered my eyes with my palm again. I'm sorry, it's my fault for not making the rules about who can come and go clearer.
So, we shouldn't have let her in.
Well, yes, but it's okay. This time it's on me, and has my dad arrived yet?
Your dad.
Please hold on, the concierge said before going to check.
He hasn't arrived yet.
I see. Well, when my dad does arrive, please let him in right away.
Understood.
I showed a photo of my dad to the concierge, saying, make sure this person is let in no matter what. Then, we loaded our bags onto the cart and took the elevator to the top floor. We're home. And sure enough, there were women's shoes at the door.
You're back early, aren't you?
My sister, more flamboyant and aged than I remembered. But that wasn't the issue. What's with that outfit? Mary appeared in nothing but her underwear. Joshua, who had been pushing the cart alongside me, was speechless, eyes wide.
What do you mean?
She laughed and said triumphantly to me, aha.
Scored a luxury high-rise and a rich husband. Let the poor keep working their part-time jobs forever.
Joshua and I were stunned. But then from behind her came another voice.
Too bad for you. Sleeping pills don't work on me anymore.
Mike appeared behind Mary, wearing nothing but a shirt over his bare skin. Mike's appearance while scratching his shaggy head and Mary's underwear on top of each other can make it look like after an affair. But I had no such parts. I was confident that wasn't the case. I had that confidence.
Using that stuff made me lose my focus. Geez.
Wait, what? You realized it was a sleeping pill, and it didn't work.
I figured I was drugged because of the strange drowsiness, but that doesn't mean I could sleep.
That's not right,
I said, ignoring Mary's comments. Mike turned to Joshua.
Joshua, thanks for helping with the shopping.
Yay, Dad, help me put stuff away.
Pushing the cart inside, Joshua moved toward the kitchen. Okay, Mike said, following him with the cart. And he murmured in a deliberately annoyed and exaggerated tone.
I had heard from Sari about her sister, so I figured there might be something up. But I never expected to be drugged right off the bat. You know, my sleep schedule is all over the place anyway. And with all the stuff I'm thinking about lately, I don't sleep unless I really try to. So yeah, I can tell the difference between natural sleepiness and the drug-induced kind.
Mary's expression grew even more severe.
Well, I figured you were up to something, so I just played along and pretended to sleep. What's with this person?
Mike laid out his words in a calm, matter-of-fact manner. Facing his composed demeanor, Mary, who had seemed so confident at first, was left utterly dumbfounded.
What is with this guy?
There was no better way to say it. She had picked the wrong opponent. What's with you, walking around in that outfit? Were you trying to create some kind of fait accompli by stripping him and pushing him into bed? I let out a deep sigh. Well, why has she always been so foolish? But given the situation, I could guess what had happened. Mary must have learned I was living in a luxury high-rise in the metropolitan area and came here. Then, gathering information around the neighborhood as my sister living in the top-floor penthouse, she found out Mike was a stay-at-home husband doing research related to my current job. Assuming Mike would be home alone, she targeted the time I was out. From Mike's perspective, after repeatedly ignoring the doorbell, he finally answered to find a woman claiming to be my sister. With his mind still half on his dissertation, Mary probably thought, seeing a disheveled, almost pajama-clad man. So she thought like this. Wow, he's young. Did my sister score a younger, intellectual, luxury high-rise owner? That's unfair. I'll steal him. And then, probably carrying sleeping pills for some reason, she tried to drug Mike, strip him, push him into bed, and confront me with the scene. But Mary didn't know Mike. He can become so absorbed in his research and writing that he forgets both time and meals. Attempting such a thing on him was bound to fail, something I knew all too well.
Wait, she was trying to create a fait accompli with me.
Mike's voice grew louder before he erupted into laughter.
What would be the point? The house is all Sarah's, after all.
Yay, what's this aunt even talking about?
Hey, watch it, kid.
Well, technically, he can call you aunt without any issues. He's my son after all.
What, your son? But he's so big, and he's still in his 20s, right?
Well, my sins from my previous marriage.
You remarried. So the rich husband you married.
Something you wouldn't know since you've been running away all this time. As I spoke, I was finally able to go to my room. After hanging up my coat and setting down my bag, Mike served me some tea. Glancing around, I noticed a haphazardly placed bag on the living room table. The bag makes my room feel strangely messy. I felt disgusted. I wanted to get rid of it quickly.
So, you're not going to serve me even a single cup of tea?
Mary watched me drink my tea with a resentful look. I don't really feel like serving someone who drugs their tea. And how long do you plan on staying in that outfit? I don't want a flasher roaming around my house.
First, explain yourself. How come you're the owner of this penthouse?
Oh, why can't conversations with this sister ever go smoothly? Well, I guess I have to explain for her to understand. You see, when my ex-husband passed away, he left us a lot of assets. That's how I bought this place. Paid in full, not a mortgage.
What? Paid in full by you? But this place must be worth millions.
Because that's still just 1/100th of the real estate I currently own. Mary was speechless. Yes, the top floor of this high-rise is completely mine. But that's not all. I now own numerous properties with a total asset value of $200 million. Not only can I live a comfortable life with the income from these properties, but I'm also an advisor to an organization involved in the preservation of American classical culture. Half of it is for tax strategies, and the other half is for Mike's sake. Essentially, my busy daily work involves being a director for this organization. And sometimes I get reports on land matters. Explaining this left Mary astonished.
To you, Sarah.
Yes, to me, because, Mary, you didn't know that I got married right after graduating from college, or even why.
What are you talking about?
Because of the mess you did, Dad's company's credibility plummeted, and we had a tough time.
HMMM. What does it matter what a grown daughter does?
You weren't of legal age at the time. Having a daughter involved in compensated dating from high school made it look like we couldn't even educate our child properly. Mom felt humiliated for a while. Then, I received a marriage proposal from the Brown family.
The Brown family?
Yes, the so-called lords of our hometown.
What? You married into that prestigious family?
I sighed deeply. Then, Mike kindly moved Joshua away, saying, "Let's go over there for a bit." Joshua understood it was an adult conversation.
So, you married into that family?
Yes, but not the person you're thinking of. I married the elder brother, who was the heir at the time.
What? The bedridden, so-called burden of the Brown family?
Yes, it was him. Indeed, my ex-husband was referred to that way. He has been sickly since birth, has hardly been to school, and has always had a doctor. That's why they said he was the burden of the prestigious family. Indeed, the family's burden from an outsider's perspective. But that was never how his family saw him. They all loved him dearly, without any desires. He happened to fall for me during one of my visits home, seen in a hospital. The Brown lords even came to our house. My son, who had never wanted anything before, wanted only one thing, so family members came to ask me, who was more than 10 years younger than him. I married at 22, partly to widen my parents' shoulders. My husband passed away while Joshua was still in my womb. My pregnancy was through IVF, since he didn't have the strength for a natural conception, fulfilling his parents' wish and mine, and I myself agreed for the sake of my sweet ex-husband. He passed away, leaving only his name for our child, unable to see his face. Left a young widow, his parents thanked me, leaving his inheritance as per his will. However, relatives eyeing the inheritance like vultures made me move to a secure high-rise downtown when Joshua started kindergarten. How can you expect me to believe such a windfall story? Mary shook her head in disbelief. She yelled at me with a look of utter disgust on her face. Even if you say that.
So what about him now? After inheriting so much, you were allowed to remarry.
I was, though I didn't need permission. I consulted them out of respect for my wonderful in-laws, who apologized for having me spend my best years caring for a sick man and undergoing IVF.
As if the inheritance wasn't enough.
They said life and time can't be bought with money. My kind in-laws, who had lost their beloved son to illness, understood the value of time and life well. They must have been touched by their wealth. After moving to the city center, I found myself exhausted from solo parenting, a stark contrast to the life surrounded by my in-laws. That's when I reconnected with Mike, a junior from college who had admired me. He became a great help to me, overwhelmed as I was. As he came and went, gradually Joshua grew fond of him. And I found myself wishing he would stay with us permanently, so I proposed. My in-laws described Mike as apparently harmless to anything but academics. Their support, rather than opposition, was probably also to deter relatives who were pushing their candidates for remarriage.
So, you're the only one getting a good deal.
Mary started to say when my phone's ringtone interrupted her. A call at this time meant, ah. I switched the phone to speaker mode after answering.
Hello, Sarah. I was worried because you hadn't replied to my messages. Are you okay?
Mary groaned on the spot. Mom, I'm fine.
Good. I thought I heard a noise like stepping on a frog. Is Mary there by any chance?
Yes, she is. I looked at Mary with a full smile.
Mom, why do you know this place?
You always forget what you've said after 3 steps. Didn't you say you were going to your sister's place?
Terrible. Why do you treat my sister differently even though we're both your daughters?
Mary yelled at the phone, genuinely angry.
What? As if you have the right to say that. After you left, Sarah marrying into the Brown family ended the terrible rumors surrounding our family. It wasn't quite being outcasts, but Dad's prominent position in the company only made the rumors worse. That situation lasted only 2 years thanks to Sarah. The Brown family helped a lot, saving our neighbors, relatives, and Dad's company factions. You were about to ruin all Dad's hard work and progress in the city's most important company.
That's your problem. I never asked him to succeed.
Yet, we could attend a private college in the city because of that.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean you get to hold it over me.
Well, maybe you're right about that, Mary, but what about the child you had in your belly back then?
Mom's voice turned cold as she asked Mary.
What?
You ran off with your partner because you were pregnant. What happened to that child?
He took the child with him.
I managed to contact him.
No, groaned Mary.
I got his number when I looked for your whereabouts through the Brown family connection.
My mom told me so.
He apologized for running away and thanked me for the divorce. He may not have been great at making money, but he was a better person than you. He's working somewhere far away to pay off his debts alone.
Alone? I asked Mom.
Yes, alone. You can guess what that means, Sarah.
Mom had mentioned that the child Mary brought was in a terrible state. I quickly turned to Mary. You, the child?
Stop it. Why are you looking at me like that?
Mom mentioned that the daughter you left with her was terribly malnourished.
That's because things have been tough lately.
Tough for someone carrying that kind of bag. I pointed to the bag thrown on the living room table. It's clearly a designer brand, isn't it?
I bought it 2 or 3 years ago.
Mom said she is just a year younger than Joshua, yet she looks like she's in preschool, right, Mom?
Yes, she is.
My mom's voice grew even lower.
Her name is Ava, right? Has she been attending kindergarten or school regularly? She seems a bit delayed in her speech.
Of course, she has.
Grandma, is Mom over there?
A frail voice came from the other end.
Yes, Ava, do you want to talk to Mom?
No. I definitely don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to Mom's.
Ava, Mary's daughter, started crying on the other end.
I don't want to end up like my sister.
I see. The grim reality seemed to hide behind those words.
We've been talking for a bit. She seems to have had an older sister.
My mom hinted at something in the past tense. So, what happened?
I don't know anything about that.
Mary hastily tried to grab her bag and clothes.
You can't.
But Mike grabbed her arm, and Joshua secured the bag and clothes. Then, turning to another phone.
Grandpa, now's the time.
With that signal, the front door opened.
Police. We received a report of trespassing and assault, and allegations of child abuse. We are here to detain the woman involved.
Sarah, good job buying us time.
Dad. The police, about 3 of them, secured Mary on the spot.
Are you all right, Miss Smith?
Yes, I am fine. The concierge was also standing by the entrance. The one who had opened the door.
It's been a while, Mary.
Dad.
One of the officers took the clothes and bag from Joshua. A blanket, likely brought in advance, was draped over Mary since they couldn't dress her in those clothes right away. Pointing to the bag, Mike said, I haven't checked inside, but I believe it contains sleeping pills. I'll be coming along for a blood test. I have a resistance, but it should still be in my system.
We appreciate your cooperation.
Then, over the phone, my mom asked me to switch to camera mode. The camera revealed my mom holding a small girl in her arms.
Officers, this woman seems to have subjected her first child to terrible treatment, leading to the loss of a small life, our first grandchild.
Ava was wearing clothes that Joshua had outgrown long ago. My parents still had Joshua's clothes from when he was little. Joshua, who was quite big for his age when he was about to enter kindergarten. His old clothes fits on his cousin, Ava. I saw his thin, bony wrists through the cuffs.
That's my old clothes. Hi, are you Ava?
Joshua gently spoke to his cousin over the screen. This is the kindness he received from his biological dad.
Yes. Who are you?
I'm Joshua, your cousin. I'm 1 year older, so I guess I'm your big brother.
Big brother.
With that, Ava, perhaps reminded of her lost sibling, started to cry again.
You should come and play sometime.
Okay, the girl nodded meekly through the screen.
Then, Sarah, we'll take her away now. Sorry for the intrusion. Joshua, let's play chess with Grandpa later.
Okay, I'll be waiting.
Right after our exchange.
What is this? Your own little soap opera. And here I am, having lost everything.
Hearing this, I strode towards Mary and slapped her sharply across the face.
No, violent woman. Officer, arrest her for obstructing public duties too.
While restraining Mary, who was struggling, the officer gave me a wry smile and tried to calm the situation. I'm sorry, but I just had to say it to my sister.
What do you want?
Everything you've lost is because of your own actions. It's nobody else's fault. Nothing's coming back to you, and I won't let it. That child will be mine. Don't you ever dare get involved with us again.
Let's go, everyone.
Mike urged my dad.
All right, see you later, Sarah.
I'll be waiting, Dad. Take care, you all. After seeing them off, I collapsed onto the couch.
Are you okay, Mom?
I'm just really tired.
It's good we did the shopping today, ho.
Indeed. What a day it had been. To think it had only been 6 hours since Mom's call. Later, Dad and Mike returned to say Mary would be detained by the police for a while.
No bail. Absolutely not.
Dad declared over a late dinner, his voice strained. She's already divorced, so there's no one on her side to take her in. Let's just get her tried quickly. Eventually, Mary was sentenced to actual jail time. She had caused her family back home great distress, led to the death of one child, and was now abandoned by the remaining child. Sometime later, my parents brought Ava to live with us.
You've become so pretty.
Joshua's words made Ava's face turn red.
Where did you learn to talk like that, huh?
Dad, stop. It tickles. Stop.
Joshua laughed, playing with Mike. Watching this scene of an adoptive dad and son, Ava looked on in amazement.
Are you sure, Auntie?
She mumbled about staying with us. I had prepared myself to adopt her, believing it to be the best course of action. Initially, I considered letting her grow up with my parents. However, they feared she might endure stigma as that girl's child in our hometown. My parents planned to move closer to me after retirement. We settled on the idea of traveling together for the summer holidays and Christmas. Ava seems a bit behind in her studies, making it difficult for her to attend the same school as Joshua. Yet, our life promises to be far better than her previous one. With the source of turmoil gone, we can now focus on finding happiness. We have plenty of time,